You are.
Juan, this should do it. Another shutout for the Cardinals, and they, for the first time ever, have swept Cleveland.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That is what it sounded like over the weekend as the Cardinals find a way to not just win the series against the Cleveland Guardians, they found a way to sweep the series. Alex, there were 27 innings played over the weekend. Do you know how many innings the Cleveland Guardians scored this weekend?
Okay, well,
they played 27 of them. How many times do you think the Guardians scored in an inning?
Okay, so there's only 9 because there's 2 shutouts. I'm going to say 1.
They scored in 1 inning over the entirety of the weekend.
1.
That's unbelievable, dude. The way that the Cardinals just completely put them away. And yes, it did require on Saturday, classic Cardinals. Classic Cardinals. They get down early, find a way to come back after being down, I believe it was 6-1. You find a way to win that one. And in the other 2 games, the bookend games, Sonny Gray throws what will go down as one of the better starts that I've seen by a Cardinals pitcher in, I don't know, the last decade. And yesterday, Matthew Liberatore, coming off of a really good start against the Cubs, puts together another outstanding performance against, a bad offense, but an offense that you were able to hold down nonetheless against the Guardians. Dude, they took advantage of what was on the other side this weekend. And I know, we've been riding this roller coaster ride, ladies and gentlemen. I'm aware of it. A few weeks ago, we came on the air after they had been swept by the Toronto Blue Jays, and then over the weekend lost 3 out of 4 against the Brewers. And I said, man, you just don't stack up against the rest of the National League contenders. I feel very differently today, ladies and gentlemen.
After the Guardians series?
Well, just after what we have seen against the Reds, the Cubs, and the Guardians. I mean, we've seen 10, 12 games since that series against the Brewers. They don't look the same as they did against the Brewers. And now you see what's happening around them in the National League. Dude, it is wide open. Those teams that I thought were better than the Cardinals, I have no reason to believe that any longer. They might not be significantly worse than you, but they're at the very least similar to where you're at. The Giants have not gone on any kind of a run. In fact, they've been worse with Devers than they were without him.
Who would have seen that coming?
Your schedule now opens up in a huge way. Up until the trade deadline, you have exactly 2 series against teams at or above 500. It's a 3-game set against Chicago coming up, and then after the break, a 4-game set against San Diego. You should be a team that is in the buyer category. As there are a bunch of these pieces that are coming out over the next week or two, you should start to see the Cardinals in the firm buyer category based upon what they have done to this point, 9 games above 500, and what lies ahead of them prior to the trade deadline.
Yeah, I saw Alexa Dapp put this one out earlier today. They've been shut out 5 times, but they've shut out their opponents 10 times this season. Only team to have more shutouts this year are the Padres with 13, and then that's the 6th sweep that they've had, which is tied with the Mets for most in Major League Baseball.
Wow.
Everything points towards this team being a playoff contender. I mean, heck, they're in a playoff spot right now. We said it on Friday that I know the Guardians are just in a different spot in terms of their run differential and how their team is organized, but they were sitting close to a wild card spot when you opened up the series against them, and it was another series like the Spider-Man meme, right? Just like the Blue Jays series where it was like, hey, kind of a team that's close to you. What do you do with it? Well, you just spanked them around for 3 straight games. I still don't know where this team is going to go, to be honest with you, BK, even after something like this of, yes, I want to say that they're definitely a buyer, but I still feel like that maybe a Ryan Helsley piece could benefit this team long-term if they decide to sell it. But look, whether it's the offense going out there and coming from behind 6-0 or 6-1, or if it's just your pitching, which when you've got Sonny Gray and Matthew Liberatore right now, those are 2 guys that you're pretty confident in when they take them on. They're going to give you competitive starts. They've got all avenues to be competitive, and right now, you are a playoff team, so it's hard to deny it.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. So now you guys are truly on board. What a... Now you guys are fully on the bandwagon for us to win the division. I don't think anybody has mentioned the division a single time so far in this conversation.
We're winning the Central,
BK was thinking
baby.
it, though, right?
Why are you guys such front runners? I don't know that this would be considered a front runner. I react to what I see.
Put the conductor hat on, you coward. Put it on, you coward.
I'm going to go put the crown on. I react to what I see on any given day. And yes, maybe sometimes it is overreactionary. I apologize for that if that's the way that you feel. That's your perspective on my reactions. But what we have seen from the Cardinals now for 85 games, I looked this up earlier today, guys. through 85 games in the last 20 years for the Cardinals. The 5 best starts to the season: 2015, 2005, 2013, 2008, and 2025. What they have done through 85 games this year, it's the 5th best start at this point in the season in the last 20 years for the Cardinals. I think a lot of what we're doing is we are using the last 2 seasons to project what the rest of 2025 will look like. And a big part of what makes this year slightly different at a minimum and completely different at most is that they didn't have that 10-25 or 15-25 start to the season. They didn't put themselves so far underwater that there was no way to dig themselves out of it. Guys, have you looked at what the Cardinals have done since May 4th?
May the 4th be with you.
Thank you, sir. And to you. Since May 4th,
that was bad.
The Cardinals are 33-19. That is tied with Houston for the best record in Major League Baseball. And I know we did this last year with Mother's Day. Remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, hey, if you just look since Mother's Day, the Cardinals best team in baseball.
It's called cherry picking, and it's what BK does best.
But last year, the Cardinals got off to one of those putrid starts, and so there was too much for them to overcome. They did finish the year, though, if you remember, over 500. They were not in the playoff race, but they were over 500, and that is despite the 15-24 start to the season. So I think that's a big difference between this year and what it has been over the last 2 years.
Well, and I remember talking, I think it was last year's team. It might have been 23, but I'm pretty sure it was last year's team. We were talking about, like, what do you fire the manager? And when they would get hot, I'd say, yeah, but I saw what their low is, and it's a 15-24 record, 9 games below 500, as you just stated there. This team, I haven't really seen a significant low point. I mean, they had that weird, 2-week stretch against the Texas Rangers, the Kansas City Royals, where they made some bad offenses look pretty good. But for the most part...
And before that, Boston and New York.
Yeah.
And Boston never happened.
That one was really sorry, Fernandez, but that was a Fernandez problem, right? Like, those are kind of circled just to one guy. I haven't really seen a significant low point from this team, right? They haven't gone through a stretch where they lose 11 of 13, for example, or the Mets, who have just lost, I think it's 11 of their last 15 and got blown.
15 of their last 17.
15 out of their 17, and they just got blown out of the water by that putrid Pittsburgh Pirates offense. So this team has not had those significant lows, and we've seen their highs now where they're 9 games above 500, which is the most that they've been this season. So, yeah, I'm with you. Maybe the shoe does drop. I'm not projecting that. I think they're going to be able to, at minimum, stabilize any kind of a small hiccup that may occur towards them. They should be buyers once they get into the trade deadline because they are a team that's in the playoff picture. They have proven what they are. You know, you can't just think at the beginning of the season, and this is what I hate, is, oh, well, we're in a runway season, so it's all about runway, right? No, the season can pivot. The season should pivot from runway because guys have taken advantage of it to, okay, let's win now, right? We've seen the pieces can play, and not just play. The pieces can play and have a winning record when they do so, and that's why I'm with you. They should be buyers. Now, I'm also with you.
It's just the hard part, man. Like, I agree.
They haven't come out and stated it publicly when they'll never do that, but they have such a great piece that is valuable in the trade market. They could do a little bit above.
It's just the tough part for me, man, because like as much as I agree with both of you, and it's like, look, I want to see winning baseball, and this is a group. I mean, Ali has talked about it to where this group always seems to be ready no matter what the circumstance is. I also understand that you just don't have this piece always available via trade in the position that you're in to just go add potentially another weapon to your arsenal of already pieces that could be really good for you in a couple of years.
Sure, you know what else is cool? Going to the playoffs. Like, I just...
Yeah, but for then a comp pick, and maybe he's good for you in 4 or 5 years, but what if you get something that's at AAA that could be good for you next year?
Or maybe that guy sucks too.
You know what? I'll roll the dice.
Like, sure, maybe you roll the dice and you end up getting nothing, and you completely nuke your opportunity to make it to the playoffs this year. I could say the same thing.
Mystery box could be anything. It could be a
maybe my mystery box second-round pick ends up becoming something.
That never happens.
We just don't know. We truly do not know. And this is where the argument, to me, kind of loses a little bit of its luster, is this notion that, oh, well, you have to do this because look at how great the return is going to be. We don't know if that return will amount to anything for the St. Louis Cardinals. And if you have an opportunity to make it to the postseason this year, a year that nobody anticipated that being the case for the Cardinals, I think you have to take advantage of it. Beyond that, though, if we just go back to the what we saw over the weekend, and this is a continuation of what we have seen from some of these players for a little while now. I think we have seen those runway players that T-Bone is talking about. They've got to the other side of some of their struggles. Victor Scott II hit a home run over the weekend, and now in his last 11 games, he's batting .265. His on-base percentage, which is hugely important for a player with his kind of speed on the base paths, is up to .360 over his last 11 games. And he's actually slugging as well with a .470 slug percentage.
Hell yeah.
So he is figuring things out once again at the plate. Nolan Gorman in the month of June now has an OPS of right around 900. And Matthew Liberatore over his last 2 starts after that weird stretch where it was like, oof, is he hitting the wall? Is this going to all come crashing back down to earth? Is he going to be this year's version of Reynaldo Lopez? Nope. Last 3 starts, if you want to include the White Sox game, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 7 innings, 2 earned runs, and then over the weekend, 6 strong innings, did not allow a run, left the game with a couple of guys on base, had some walk issues there, but overall a really good performance by him this weekend as well. Those are 3 key contributors for this Cardinals team, both in the lineup and on the mound, that have found their way to the other side of some of these struggles. That is a huge part of what the season was always supposed to be about. Get punched in the mouth and get back up and find a way to respond. The Cardinals have found a way to do that with 3 key young contributors.
And that is what makes you a big leaguer, right? That is the number one thing that we can talk about all you want about, oh, wow, he looked really good for a month. Question is, how long does it take you to adjust when Major League Baseball adjusts? And that's the one thing you haven't seen from Jordan Walker, right? We're in year 3 of waiting for an adjustment for Jordan Walker. Alec Burleson's made the adjustments. Oh, good.
I'm not living on that one.
You've seen Nolan Gorman be able to make the adjustments. Now, this is definitely just the classic Nolan Gorman.
Not buying into
it's
that
a hot
one.
month, but like, you can live with Nolan Gorman on a roster if this is what the hot months look like and they last this long. The problem with Nolan Gorman last year...
It's been a month now.
Yeah, last year Nolan Gorman was like, oh, here comes the hot streak. And it was gone in a week. And it was like,
5
oh,
days.
wait a minute. Yeah, well, it's supposed to last longer than that. So this is where it's encouraging is you are seeing these adjustments. And Liberatore, I think, is the biggest one. You know, we can talk about the offense all we want. They need to start developing some homegrown pitching if you're going to win. And the fact that he isn't the Reynaldo Lopez and it looks like he was, hey, mechanics just got out of whack for 3 stars. Oh, thank goodness, man. I'm so excited to see that you might have a number 2 or 3 developed internally.
He's T-Bone. That is Alex. I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. We'll have questions and answers coming up at 11:45. Katie Wu, the Cardinals insider, joins us at 12, as she does each and every Monday here on the show. But coming up next, T-Bone had an aneurysm when I suggested this for the first time. Is Pedro Pages winning over this fan base as the legitimate catcher, not only of the present, but potentially of the future as well? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about my friends out at Classic Air Care. Once we enter this time of the year when it is just hot every single second of the day, you've got to make sure that your HVAC system is able to handle all of this heat, and that is where Classic Air Care comes into play. I've been using them since 2016 on both of the houses that I've lived in. My family has been using them for the last 30 years, and it comes down to the customer service, the knowledgeable technicians that are available when they come out to service your home. And the biggest commitment that Classic Air Care makes is making you comfortable, and they've been doing so since 1926. And here's the biggest perk, in my opinion. They've got over 100 vans that are out there on the road, which means they're going to get to their customers faster. So typically when you call, they can guarantee that within 24 hours, you're going to get a response and get on the schedule to have Classic Air Care come out. Plus, they're running 7 days a week, and they have after-hour technicians that are available on call. Plus, those technicians have over 30 years of experience. So check them out today. Schedule your appointment for a maintenance agreement. I promise that is going to pay off for you throughout the longevity of that HVAC system. Just do me a favor and tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. Check them out, Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Fly ball, left field. It's Newbar backing up. He's there. Sonny Gray, spectacular. Nearly perfect. A one-hitter. He allowed one base runner. And he goes the distance to shut out the Guardians tonight. 5-0 the final.
That's what it sounded like on Friday night as Sonny Gray puts together one of the best performances that we've seen by a Cardinals pitcher in quite some time. Alongside Alex and T-Bone and BK, that audio courtesy of Apple TV. Of course, something cool happens for the Cardinals on Apple TV. That's the way that it always tends to go. Alex, after that game, Apple TV did a post-game interview with Sonny Gray. They pull him over, and you know how this works, right? The PR guy goes over to Sonny and says, hey, we're going to get you over here for Apple TV. Sonny Gray immediately then turns his attention to Pedro Pages and says, come over here, you're going to do this with me. I thought that was a super cool moment, and I'm really glad the reporter immediately asked a question about it.
You just said Pedro's going to do this with me. Why is that?
I mean, he's just as much as a part of this thing as I was tonight. The defense, the offense, I mean, everyone's a part of. If you throw a complete game, it's not just on you. There's so many other people that are a part of that along the way. And Pedro was, I mean, even down to that last pitch, I shook him, and then he said, no, you don't. And then I was like, yeah, you're right. Got him to fly out. So I mean, everyone's a part of it. It's not just me.
All right, so obviously Sonny Gray appreciates Pedro Pages. The manager, I can promise you, appreciates Pedro Pages. The pitching coach appreciates Pedro Pages. And every other pitcher that you talk to on the team appreciates Pedro Pages. And yet, I don't think that the fan base quite appreciates Pedro Pages the way that those inside of the organization do. Alex, are we starting to get there? Are we learning more about what Pedro Pages brings to the table in terms of what he can do for a staff? Because you look at what the Cardinals pitchers' ERAs are when they pitch to the individual catchers that the Cardinals have had this year. With Ivan Herrera behind the plate, it's a 5.4. With Joel Pozo behind the plate, it's a 4.3. With Pedro Pages behind the plate, the Cardinals pitchers have a 3.5 ERA, which would be among the best in all of Major League Baseball. There is clearly a difference between him being back there and any other catcher behind the plate. So are we starting to buy into this notion that, hey, maybe this guy could actually be the primary catcher for the Cardinals for not just right now, but for potentially years to come?
I don't know how you wouldn't from the numbers you just provided. Like, people don't like... I shouldn't say people. Some don't like the idea of a just all defensive-minded catcher that really isn't contributing with his bat, especially when you have a bat as great as Ivan Herrera is. And I think the frustration for a lot of people, for St. Louis fans, is Herrera is such a good bat, and you're always talking about the concern of how do you make this lineup work? Just put Herrera behind the plate. Not at the cost of your pitching staff being borderline awful. I mean, like, that's what we've seen. We've seen pitchers just get run off the mound in a game when Herrera is behind the plate. And hearing Ollie talk about how, and this was the quote that he had, where, look, it's like, I prefer, or I think there's a place for those defensive-minded catchers. When you've got Pedro Pages and the pitching staff performing the way they are, he should be a part of your team moving forward, because it's getting the best out of your certain pitchers. If you don't believe me, look at Matthew Liberatore. Like, Matthew Liberatore is a guy you were hoping to make developments with. And I think if you look at the splits of when Pages is catching for him or Pozo or Herrera is catching for him, you've seen those blow-up innings with Matthew Liberatore.
Go look up Andre Palante's numbers real quick.
Yeah.
Just go look it up.
Yeah.
Go look it up what he was like with Ivan Herrera behind the plate compared to what he's been like with anybody else behind the plate. And you guys know I love Ivan Herrera, and I think he's going to have a really long Major League Baseball career because that dude can absolutely mash. He's not a catcher right now. Maybe he will be down the road, but as of today, that is part of his game that has not developed to the same degree as Pedro Pages. Pedro Pages also has not developed as a bat the way that Ivan Herrera has. The different players have different strengths.
And so here's the question that I'll ask to your question going into this segment of, like, can Pages win over the fans? Do you have to have a playoff moment to win over the fans? Because Yadi was an elite defensive catcher. We know that. But at what point did people say, yep, Yadi's the future of this team?
2011.
Yeah.
I was thinking
2006 because, yeah, he had the big hit against the Mets.
I should clear. 2011 is when it was more than just he's a defensive catcher. 2011, he developed as a bat. You win the World Series with him behind the plate, and it was like, oh, okay. In the post-Albert era, he can also be part of the offense now. Yeah. He's not just this guy behind the plate. I'm so glad you brought up Yadier Molina, though, Alex, so that way I don't have to do it unprompted.
And the only reason I'm bringing up Yadier Molina is because, look, to win over a fan base for somebody that is elite defensively, like, you have to be one of the few. But Yadi wasn't just always a defensive catcher. The offense clicked at some point.
Yeah, and like if you're 8 years into his career.
Yeah. And you already had 2 championships under your belt. Or one, and then the second one came, but you had another trip to the World Series.
I think what you say about Yadi, though, is really instructive here, because from age 21 to age 27, Yadier Molina was 20% below league average offensively. He was a guy that had an OPS of 688. Pedro Pages right now is 20% below league average offensively. Mm-hmm. He is almost a one-for-one replacement on the bat side with what Yadier Molina was. Mm-hmm. And if Cardinals fans are going to say, hey, Yadier Molina is a first-ballot Hall of Famer, even if he never hit, even if that's what he was for his entire career. And I think there's a real case to be made there, because when you hear the players talk about the way that Yadi could navigate a game, there is value there that we can't understand with any of the numbers. There is no number for it. Well, if I believe that, and if I'm going to be somebody that also then spews that, I also have to say, man, well, there's crazy value in what Pedro Pages brings from behind the plate. We got this text, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, every time we hear about Pages, we hear about how he calls a great game. It's hard for me to understand why they can't teach Pozo or Herrera to then call a great game. It's like anything in life. Like, why can't I learn how to hit a baseball? Why can't I go out there and like become the next great chess player? I'm not capable. It's not something that is in my range of outcomes, right? There is, like, for baseball wise, I just don't have that kind of hand-eye coordination. For the playing of chess, like, I don't have that kind of mental acuity. Some guys do not retain information the same way and then have the ability to put it into action like that. And Pozo doesn't have that same degree of ability as Pages does. Pozo can hit better, though,
than
Pages can.
Especially if it's a lefty on the mound.
Herrera hits better than Pages can. So these guys have other strengths. They can do things at a really high level, but this is Pages' superpower, man. He's really good at taking a game plan, putting it into action, and getting the most out of his pitcher, and then finding a way to alter it, depending on what's taking place over the course of that game. Like, if he starts to see guys, hey, we came in and we thought the slider away was going to be a great game plan against their righties. Well, it's not working right now because they're all waiting on that for whatever reason. All right, now let's go fastball inside. Let's try to take him away from that. Like, he's very good at those adjustments. So that's why it's not just something that's super easy to pick up. It takes a really long time, and some of it is just feel. Do you have that feel for the game or not? And Pedro Pages very clearly does.
Yeah, and that's baseball IQ, right? And that's not something that everybody has. That is a instinct thing. So I think you describe it perfectly. It's about retaining information. It's about going with the script and then knowing when to bail off of the script. Whether that is reading a batter's swing, reading what your pitcher is throwing, that is the game calling. And I think the differences of why they're viewed differently from when Yadi was the defensive catcher to why Pages is one, the winning, like you had mentioned, Alex. Two, the fact that there were just stars on that team, right? That it took a lot of pressure away from a guy like Yadier Molina, because you had Albert Pujols that was on that freaking team. Scott Rowland, Edmonds, Holiday by the time you get to 2011, Berkman. So, like, those guys take away some of the pressure of the feeling of, well, if we're going to be this idea of, like, what the Cardinals are now, which is pack mentality, or a catcher has to hit then, right? And that's just not the case. The other thing, too, is the public available data was a lot more in favor of Yadi in terms of not just we hear he's a good game caller, but what does that mean? Well, they could look at it and say, well, he catches 40% of base stealers, and teams are terrified to run on him. And Pages has gotten better at it, but he's not up to that. He's not even close to 40%. So people just look at that and say, well, if I don't understand how valuable game calling is, and I see his stolen base caught percentage isn't the same as, like, Yadi's, is he really that valuable? And I would argue he is, and I've gotten to that side. And I also just looked this up because I was watching a baseball game, and they had mentioned the catcher position, and they were talking about the offensive side of catchers. Do you guys know how many catchers in baseball that have had a minimum of 150 plate appearances, Pages at slightly over 200, minimum of 150 plate appearances, have a WRC plus of 100 or better.
So are above average offensively
Yes.
is what you're asking. 4. It's got to be a really low number.
Yeah, I was thinking like 3 or 2.
It's not that low, 14. Not even half the league.
I'm actually really surprised that high.
Not even half the league, though, is my point here.
Yep.
Has a catcher that's above average offensively. And a lot of those guys are between, if you did that to 10% or higher above league average, it would be 9. So that is my point of everybody across baseball is starting to put a lot of value into catchers that are more defensive minded and building more of their lineups to control be more of the offensive threats rather than saying, okay, let's have that multi-threat asset with a catcher.
It's why it's so crazy what Cal Raleigh is doing right now.
Yeah.
What he is doing both behind the plate and at the plate as a hitter, it's unreal, man. And he should be in the MVP conversation because of that. Now, I don't think he's going to win it because Aaron Judge is putting together another just ridiculous season. But all of this goes back to Pedro Pages has a real claim as the Cardinals catcher. At a minimum, this is your dude for this season and probably next year. And then it becomes a question of, all right, how do you value what you're getting internally with Jimmy Crooks or Leo Bernal or eventually way down the road, Ray Rodriguez, who's coming through the system now. Like, they've got some guys behind the plate that they really like. From what I understand, I don't think any of them are as highly thought of as a game caller as what Pedro Pages is currently viewed as. So the Cardinals need to get offense from places, and they'll look for that offense from elsewhere. You can construct a roster around elite defense in center, elite defense at catcher, and then get your offense from everywhere else. You can have 2 guys at the bottom of your order that hit well below league average as long as the rest of your lineup is full of at least major league average hitter. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get into questions and answers. Katie Wu joins us at the top of the 12 o'clock hour. But coming up next, dude, this market is not helping the Blues when it comes to improving the roster heading into 2025. What the hell is Doug Armstrong going to do to improve at the center position? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK from my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, one in O'Fallon, Missouri, another in O'Fallon, Illinois, Sunset Hills, and the location that I personally go to in town and country. If you guys have any issues with testosterone, if you have low testosterone symptoms that could show up in a number of different ways, maybe less energy than you once did, you have less results from your workouts than you used to, could be due to low testosterone, might as well go get those levels checked. They can do that for you at Victory Men's Health. If you're looking for weight loss goals that you're trying to meet, erectile dysfunction issues that you're trying to improve, or if you want to learn more about their cardiovascular testing, red light therapy programs, vitamin infusions, it's all available for you today at Victory Men's Health. Unlocking your inner champion means different things for different people. Find out what they can do for you today at Victory Men's Health and go to their website online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Cleveland Guardians yesterday 7-0 as they sweep Cleveland, and they head to Pittsburgh tonight where they'll start a 3-game set against the Pirates. 5:40 will be first pitch. Andrew Heaney will be on the mound for Pittsburgh. Eric Fetty will get the start for St. Louis. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CMOLondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, so it was a big weekend in the NHL. Sam Bennett has re-signed. Every other center that you've ever thought about in free agency, they've re-signed as well. The defenseman that we talked about potentially being interested in the Blues, he didn't want to come to the Western Conference. Noah Dobson has since been traded and signed elsewhere as well. The class stinks now, Alex. There's just no way around it. If you want a center, good luck. It's Pius Suter. Maybe if you believe Mikael Granlund is a center, you could play him there for a little while. A couple other dudes that maybe you get 30 to 40 points out of, but that's pretty much it. This is not the class that you want to be finding a center in. And over the weekend, Doug Armstrong said, yeah, there's 27 teams in the league that are looking for a middle six center. Unfortunately, we're one of them. So as you look around and you try to look at, okay, how are the Blues going to improve then? What's your answer, Alex?
Might not happen. I mean, look, to me, there's 3 paths right now. One is trade, and that trade list is starting to dwindle because Vegas is expected to make the deal with Toronto for the sign-in trade, which means Nick Waugh is going to get moved. You have the Islanders that are basically saying, nah, we're good unless you want Pageau, but you're going to have to overpay him. The teams that I thought could make trades, they're not there anymore. So now you go to the signings of free agents, and like you just mentioned, you basically go Suter, Granlund, and that's it. The third best center is probably Radek Fox on this free agent market. So you might not even get him back. And then the third option is you might just have to run it back with what you have. And I know nobody likes that. A lot of people don't like that option. But, man, when you look around, if you're not making a trade, which Doug told everybody, look, everybody's trying to make trades right now. Good luck trying to pull that one off because you have to pay probably more than what you want to.
People are trying to make trades that make them better right now. That's the problem is people are not doing the, hey, we'll give you a future, you give us the better player. Everybody wants the better player. And so when everybody's in that same bucket, there's no other bucket to pull from where teams are asking for futures the way that Utah has for 100 different years. San Jose has for a number of different years. Chicago has. Now those teams either have no players anymore or are starting to try to get good again. Anaheim being one of those that's trying to get good again now. So you end up in a spot where everything's just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
The market's stuck right now in the NHL.
Yeah, everybody thinks they're a playoff contender right now. Now, maybe that changes 2 months into the season, and there might be another in-season trade if a team doesn't start off as well as you'd think. But there's just not a lot of options out there to make trades or free agent signings, which there might be somebody that kind of falls through the cracks over the next couple of days once free agency opens and, they try and do a prove-it one-year deal that the Blues say, hey, it makes sense for us. But I think realistic option is number 3. You might just have to run it back with what you have and see what happens throughout the season because you're either overpaying for a guy that doesn't make sense for you or you're overpaying to make a trade and getting rid of something off of your roster that makes you worse rather than makes you better.
I'm still okay with Suter. I'm still okay with Granlund. Now, at a certain price, right? I'm not willing to get crazy with him, and it might require you to get a little crazy given where the market's at right now, where there are 27 teams looking for a center, and there are literally 2 that are legitimate upgrades on the market currently. Those are guys that I would at least have some interest in. And then, Alex, you've mentioned some of these names in the past. If you want to go lower on the market and you do a 1-year deal for Christian Dvorak, or you want to go get Cody Glass, I'm open to these ideas. They're not sexy. Nobody is going to be excited by any of the names that I'm about to mention, but could you make yourself a better team by going out and doing that, dropping Sonny down to the 4th line or bringing Foxa back and now Sonny is your 13th forward? Yeah, I think that makes you a little bit better heading into next season. So it might just be a scenario where the Blues explored everything. They tried to seriously improve the roster. Dobson didn't want to play in the West. The centers went back to their teams, and the Blues are sitting here now heading into July 1st tomorrow and thinking, I guess we'll just have to marginally upgrade. Yep. And then we'll expect significant improvements from within. Is that good enough? I guess that's really the question is Where does that put you in the West?
I think it puts you right where you're at right now. I think it puts you somewhere between 7 and 9 in the Western Conference in terms of teams that are there. Now, there are some that were below 10 that are going to push a little bit more this season. I think Anaheim is going to be in that conversation. Calgary is going to be in that conversation. But I also think there are teams that needed obvious upgrades that aren't getting them, like the Minnesota Wild. They needed help at center. They aren't getting it right now because there's nothing out there.
Meanwhile, Marco Rossi's like, yo.
Yeah, you want to re-sign me?
I played well for you.
I mean,
I know I'm 5'5", but chill.
It puts you right back where you're at currently. And I know it's scary because you need to try and improve if you want to compete with some of these teams. But to me, you expect marginal improvements for certain guys that struggled in the early portion of the season under Jim Montgomery. If you get that improvement, if you get the next step for certain players, maybe you could put yourself in a position that by December or January, you look around and you say, yeah, we need a slight improvement. Maybe we can pull some type of trade like we did with Cam Fowler, but we're in a good enough position. I think that might be where you're at right now because overpaying for a suitor, which it sounds like there's everybody in the market that needs a centerman is going to go after this guy, which means talk about 5.5 plus.
That's amazing.
And then the other one, I am so out on Granlund because he's not a centerman. Like you can squint and pretend he can play center. He's not a centerman. So those are the two options you're trying to upgrade with. I think you could get a little better if you go after a Cody Glass or a Christian Dvorak or one of these lower level free agents that you take a chance on. But I think you're also just in a position that, you know what? Let's see what our guys got and see what happens as the season rolls on.
T-Bone, this reminds me a little bit of where the Cardinals were at last offseason. I was like, you know what? It doesn't make sense for us to go to the market to get what we already have. Or at least what these guys have the potential to be. And now you're looking at it, and it's twofold. One, thank God nobody wanted Nolan Arenado. Thank God. Because if that guy wasn't here, I know he's not having the greatest season in the world, but defensively, that guy makes you better. You're a better team with Nolan Arenado here than you would have been if he was not here. Imagine what you would be doing right now, especially if you didn't have that bat in the lineup against left-handed pitchers. Oh boy, would you be struggling. And two, man, it's kind of a blessing in disguise that they didn't go out there and go add the typical, like, okay, we'll get a right-handed bat. We'll go add a couple of pieces, both in maybe one in the rotation, one in the bullpen. It's better that they have these opportunities for the young guys who have proven their worth. Is it possible we look at it the same way for the Blues, where we get midway through next year and we're like, man, I'm really glad X, Y, and Z got the opportunity, because if the Blues had gone to the market, we wouldn't have seen what they were capable of. Is that same opportunity there for the Blues as it was with the Cardinals?
I think it's possible, because I was thinking of this over the weekend, and on the Cardinals one, it was the blessing this guy was missing the playoffs because it accelerated them into believing,
Correct.
Okay, we can't keep doing this. But that was more of a positive. When I think of this for the Blues, I mean, I guess it's possible it could become a positive for them. Like they say, okay, well, now we just do need that internal improvement from like wingers, or Buchnevich have a full good season again, and maybe end up getting that. I also wonder about it, could it potentially be a blessing in disguise of what if the team is what they were in the first half of the season, right? Like when we talk about the St. Louis Blues, we talk about the team that was, then what was it, 96-point team that made the Western Conference playoffs and pushed the number 1 seed Winnipeg Jets to 7 games and should have won Game 7. But I also have to remember in the back of my mind that they had significant swings throughout their season. They reminded me a lot, and I'm not saying they're the same team, but the 2021 Cardinals, which was, boy, early on it was, well, that's not a playoff team, and there's a lot of talk about the culture, and do you need to change the core? Do you need to trade a guy like a Jordan Kyrou? And then they go on that miraculous run where they go on the franchise record winning streak, just like that 21 Cardinals team, and it propels them into the playoffs, and you have to figure out, okay, which one of these teams are we more like, or what does the happy medium look like for that team? And when I bring that up, that's why I ask is it possible that if they don't get involved in the market because the market doesn't really evolve the way that they thought it was going to, that's more the blessing in disguise, because then you don't go out and you sign a big contract and the core is more of like what it was in the first half. You're going, wait, we have a lot more questions about this, and we just signed somebody to a long-term deal.
I don't know how you feel, Alex. I have zero concern about them being the team that they were in the first half of the season. Same. Now, I do have concern of them not being as good as they were in the second half of the season. Like, if they're just somewhere in the middle, you become an average team that's around 500. That is my concern. But I have exactly zero concern that they will be under Jim Montgomery what they were under Drew Bannister. And I don't mean to be that blunt, but it's just the reality. I have no concern about that.
I don't either. I think what we saw in the first month and a half of the season until Montgomery was brought in was a group of guys that didn't know what the game plan was on the ice. I mean, Pavel Buchnevich essentially said that the day prior to Bannister being fired. We're in the offensive zone and we don't know what we're doing out there. The problem for the Blues in the early portion of Bannister was they had no offense. They couldn't score goals. They looked like a lost puppy in the offensive zone. What happens? They bring in Jim Montgomery. It's strict and they know exactly what they're doing. And I don't really remember swings with Jim Montgomery. I remember dry spells with Jim Montgomery, and then it was like, okay, what's going on? And then the ship got righted. But yeah, I have zero concerns about that because to me, 3 guys on your roster weren't relevant under Drew Bannister. Pavel Buchnevich was basically a minus like 8 under Bannister and was nowhere near a point per game player. Dylan Holloway was not the offensive player he was, and Zach Bolduc was a shadow of himself. And those are 3 guys that turned it around under Jim Montgomery.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Katie Woo. She's the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. We'll get her thoughts on the weekend that was for the Cardinals, what it means for them in the bigger picture, and what she thought about Nolan Gorman and Victor Scott finding a way to work themselves through some of their struggles this season. We'll get into that with Katie Woo in 15 minutes. Questions and answers coming up next here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. We'll talk to Katie Wu coming up here in about 10 minutes on the show, but we want to get your questions in right now. From the 314, guys, is it possible that given the lack of options on the free agent and trade market, the Blues would try Pavel Buchnevich at center again?
Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen. Hell no. We all experienced that together, right? Mm-hmm. Like 2 games into the season, it was like, what is happening? Stop this. I've seen people say, well, put Dylan Holloway there. Why would you put a guy that just scored 30 goals for you at the center position? And then, this is the wild one. I've seen people say, well, put Kyrou there. Kyrou played center in juniors hockey.
He's listed as a center on all the hockey websites.
What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen?
I have not seen that one. That's good.
What are we doing? Nathan Walker is the one that people are saying put him at the third line center position.
I don't think we're that desperate for centerman.
We're not that desperate, guys. If all of those options are what you're asking for, just put freaking Dalibor Dvorsky at the third line center and take your lumps.
All right, from the 314, guys, what do you think of Bo Byram as a Blues option?
I don't mind it. We said this on Friday. I'm not trading Kyrou for just Bo Byram.
Oh, God, no.
Like, I would have traded Kyrou for Dobson. I mean, although you weren't here, Grant heavily swayed me in the direction of, God, please do not acquire Noah Dobson. Apparently, big problem for the New York Islanders. So I'm kind of glad that they didn't get him.
I would have been excited about it.
Byram's not enough for Kyrou. Now, if we're talking Byram and one of their centers, I think it makes sense. Byram is...
I think it was Byram and Peterka was the Kyrou conversation.
I do, too.
I think without Peterka in the conversation, I'm not sure how they could get...
I think
they could put together a realistic package that would include Jordan Kyrou.
I think that the conversation was, and this is just speculation by me, St. Louis saying, you're going to have to give us a centerman, whether it's McLeod or you give us Josh Norris, who they acquired from the Ottawa Senators. That's the only way we're making this deal. And obviously, Buffalo's not going to do that. I like Byram. I don't think he's as good as Noah Dobson, but I think the trade would have made sense if you could have got a center in return also.
Byram is so much more about potential than it is about production. Everything about his career thus far has been like, he's okay. He drives a little bit of offense, and otherwise, like, Colorado gave up on him, I think, for a reason. I don't think that's an organization that just tends to give up on really good players that early in their career when they were a top 5 pick.
No, they just give up on players when they're consistent 50-goal scorers because they don't want to pay them.
Touche, but Byram's a weird one for me. I struggle with him. I think I have a blind spot for him a little bit. If they traded for him, I would get long-term what you're projecting, because he's a 23-year-old defenseman, and you probably believe, like, hey, he's going to hit his prime within the next few seasons. He's nowhere close to what he's going to be just yet. I get that. It would just make me really nervous on what the cost would be for you to get there. So Kyrou for Byram, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's
a way
overpay.
Is there a trade that could exist, though, that would make sense for the Blues? Sure, I can see that.
Yeah, that's way overpay, Kyrou for Byram.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Alex, this is something we talked about off air. Seattle has some centers. Would they be of interest to you?
Yeah, I kind of poo-pooed it last night when you and I were talking over text, just in terms of, like, Friedman saying, like, hey, there's a potential that you could go out there and make a trade with them. I don't think Kyrou for Shane Wright or Jared McCann is enough. But I do wonder if maybe Seattle's get to the point where they say, you know what, Beniers is not what we thought he was going to be. Had a really bad season for them last year, 20 goals. Just wild that that's a bad season, but in 82 games, they've got like 6 centermen on their roster. They've got Beniers, Stevenson, Wright, Goudreau. They've got McCann. So, yeah, I could see that, but I think the only way I'm trading Kyrou to Seattle is if you're giving me Matty Beniers. And that would be a hell of a deal by the Blues, too.
Yeah, I don't think that's likely. I think Shane Wright's probably the guy that you're more likely to get.
Yeah.
And Shane Wright, to me, is really interesting. I wouldn't want to trade Kyrou for him, but some of these conversations come down to, what is your level of fear about the Kyrou deal? Like, are you scared that you can't win a cup with Kyrou on the team? Because if you are, you probably need to make that move, I don't know, within the next 12 hours. If you think you can win a cup with him, though, then there's no reason to push yourself into a spot where you feel like you got to make this move right now.
Yeah.
And trading Kyrou for Shane Wright would feel like a move where you're like, I got to get off of this.
Yeah.
So, Shane Wright to me is interesting. If I'm excited about a guy like, I don't know, Zach Bolduc, I feel like you also have to be excited about Shane Wright and what he could potentially be. He's 21 years old. He had 20 goals this past year. It's pretty good. I know he was a third-line center, but the Blues would be asking him to be a third-line center as well. Maybe he could grow into that second-line center. And then you look at it, dude, with Thomas, Shane Wright, and Alibor Dvorsky as potentially down the middle options for you for the next 5 to 7 years, that's a hell of a starting point. So I would be interested in it. I would understand the logic behind it, but no, it would not be something that I'm necessarily like overly excited about.
Yeah. I think the guy that I'd be targeting is Beniers if they're willing to trade him. And I mean, that would be the equivalent of a equal trade in my opinion, because you're giving a guy that couldn't live up to number one center position for the Seattle Kraken for a guy that couldn't live up to the number one wing identity that the Blues were hoping for. I think it's an even swap. I just don't know if Seattle's going to do that.
All right, from the 217, final thing here. Guys, did you see the Dolphins-Steelers trade? And if so, what'd you think? First of all, I love player-for-player trades.
Yeah,
it almost never happens in the NFL, especially guys that are veterans. Sometimes you'll see this of guys that are at the back end of their rookie deals, both of whom have been busts. And they're like, change of scenery. Let's see if this works for both of us. Both of them more often than not end up getting cut anyways. But this is a cool trade because it's a former All-Pro from one side going up against a former All-Pro on the other side, with Jalen Ramsey going to Pittsburgh and Minkah Fitzpatrick going to Miami, where he started his career and desperately wanted out early on in his career. So I like it in that regard. Does it really change either of the two teams in a meaningful way? To me, the answer is no. I don't think it really does. So on the field, I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have, but it's a fun trade nonetheless.
I do like Pittsburgh adding Jonnu Smith to the equation as well in the tight end room, especially with that Arthur Smith offense that they like to run.
Arthur Smith can't possibly have an offense without him.
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world for them to go out there and make it. And I'm just fascinated to see how this works out. They made the money work. It was basically 1-for-1 because I thought Ramsey was going to be a Ram. I didn't know how they were going to make it work. They've been in on him for like the entire offseason. We'll see. You're right. It doesn't change much for either team. It's just kind of cool to see the 1-for-1 swap. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, coming up in about 15 minutes, is the Kyrou story officially coming to an end today? We'll talk about that in 15 minutes. Katie Wu, Cardinals Insider, joins us next here on BK and Ferrario.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll talk a little bit more about Jordan Kyrou, but we go back to the St. Louis Cardinals with our friend, the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She's Katie Wu, joining us as she does each and every Monday via the Callier and Thompson hotline. Katie, it was a great weekend for the Cardinals, which is typically seemingly the case when you're not around the team these days. Great start by Sonny Gray on Friday night. How you doing today?
Yeah, I think maybe that I should just stop coming to games because they seem to play really well when I'm not in the vicinity of the ball club. So maybe it's a me thing. I don't know. I had some FOMO watching the game, especially with Sonny Gray. I was like, I would actually really like to write this. But alas, I was not there. So if they get swept in Pittsburgh, I don't know whose fault that is, but I don't know if we can draw any correlation there, guys. It's BK's, right?
Yeah, Katie, the proper answer is it's BK's fault.
That's not fair. I'm not at these games.
He was in Louisville over the weekend when Cleveland made the shutout, so wasn't paying attention. BK. Wasn't paying attention.
All right, so let's get into this. Friday night, they get that unbelievable start out of Sonny Gray, and I thought it was really cool. I heard your podcast yesterday as well, Katie, so I heard you talking about this with Bernie. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Pedro Pages aspect of Sonny Gray's start from Friday night. Pedro Pages, now, when he's behind the plate, the Cardinals have a 3.5 ERA among all of their pitchers that throw to him. When Pozo's behind the plate, it's 4.3. When Herrera's behind the plate, it's 5.5. The team has been talking about this for a while, and I think sometimes on the outside we're slow to the gun with this, but is this guy just not only their catcher for today, but possibly their catcher for a while? Is that how we should start to view Pedro Pages?
I think so, and I think he's deserved it. And look, I understand from a fan's perspective, there aren't a lot of good, informative, qualitative stats that show why Pedro Pages is a good catcher. In fact, a lot of his metrics suggest that he is just average. But when you have the opportunity to talk to the starting rotation, the relievers, Ollie Marmol, Dusty Blake, go on and on about the preparation and how much trust this pitching staff has in their catcher, I tend to go off that. And again, from a fan standpoint, you're like, well, okay, how can I see that? How can you prove that? I thought Sonny Gray, having Pedro come over in his post-game interview, proved that. I mean, that a veteran guy doesn't do that to a young catcher for no reason. That was something that absolutely had intent behind it. And we're seeing this more and more with Pedro, why he's in the lineup every day, why there's a reluctance to pitch it for him, because you lose the game-calling aspect of the game. Look, I know he doesn't jump off the page from a stat perspective, but if we're looking at the ERA is a great example of this. If we're looking for what Pedro Pages brings to the staff, I mean, does any fan base understand how important it is to have a pivotal game-calling catcher more than the Cardinals? They had one of the best in baseball for almost 2 decades. So, and I'm in no way comparing the two, but I do think what Pedro Pages is doing might not jump out on Baseball Savant or StatCast, but it's absolutely made an impact for the starting rotation, especially. Guys, we're all pretty low on this rotation coming into the season, and it's actually been a pretty big crutch for this Cardinals team. Pedro has a lot of responsibility behind that.
So then, and this seems like a dumb question, Katie, does this just kind of end the whole Ivan Herrera production in terms of trying to make him a catcher? Does he just move into DH role for the rest of this season, and then beyond this season, it's finding a new position for him?
It's a fair question, and I don't think the Cardinals are there just yet, but we've certainly seen, especially if they continue keeping up their winning ways, a shift and a preference towards Pedro. They're not totally giving up on Herrera behind the plate. He's still so young, guys, and there's, as we go through this runway transition season, whatever you want to call it, there should still be some opportunity for him to get behind the plate when healthy again. If we talk about a position change long-term for Herrera, that probably isn't going to happen at the earliest until the offseason, and that makes sense because there's really no reason to kind of deviate fully from this position until the Cardinals are fully sure what they have in both Pedro and Herrera. They know what they have offensively, but I'm in agreement with them that it's too early to really pull the plug on Herrera behind the plate. Obviously, you want him to get healthy first before you come to that decision. But if the Cardinals go through the second half and they're still in contention like they will be, then I think you're going to play the better all-around catcher, and that's Pages. But, of course, you can still keep Herrera's bat in the lineup as the DH, which I'm sure complicates things for Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson, but we'll get there.
Katie was our guest here on 101 ESPN. You mentioned one of the players that I did want to ask you about next. Nolan Gorman, Victor Scott, and I'll add Matthew Liberatore into this mix as well. All three of them about midway through the first half of the season, they hit some dry spells, whether it be Libby with just hitting a wall and suddenly in the fourth or fifth inning he's throwing 90, or Gorman with the strikeout issues and just like the not impacting the ball the way that we thought he was going to. Scott, pitchers figured out, hey, throw it low and away. He's not going to be able to do much with that. All three of them have been very good now. For Libby, the last three starts. For Gorman and Scott, really over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Are we seeing what it looks like when young players are able to respond, are able to adjust to the league? And are those three guys that have shown us that ability?
Yes, exactly. And this was the whole point of the season, right? It was, hey, we're going to go throw at our young guys there, and they're hopefully going to get off to a good start. But at some point, the league is going to catch up, and they're going to find some failure. Now it's about how they can respond and adjust in real time, and all three are great examples. And I know that there's a lot of frustration heading into the season about the team and the organization and the direction. But maybe I think that caused a lot of scrutiny to be on these players when they didn't start off on a good note. I'm thinking about Nolan Gorman here. Or when Matthew Liberatore faltered and had those 3 starts in mid-May where he just didn't look like Libby. It's easy to be skeptical and say, well, we knew what they were. That, I think, could not have been more unfair to these 3 players. And also Lars Nootbaar in there as well. No player is going to go out and have a fantastic, perfect 162-game season. Slumps are inevitable, whether you're a pitcher or a hitter. For these players, you almost want them to experience that because they need to learn how to adjust in the real-time ups and downs of the season. Of course, Victor Scott was going to struggle a little bit. That was the goal. That was the purpose. Of course, Nolan Gorman is going to come in and have to make some swing changes. Again, that was the goal. That was the purpose. Matthew Liberatore, his first time really, truly as a starting pitcher in the rotation, is going to hit a hiccup. How he responds from that is how the team knows how they can evaluate him further. So this is all part of the plan, and it's why you stick with it. Victor Scott has really taken advantage of his runway. I think he has the 3rd most games played for the Cardinals this year, and we're seeing Nolan Gorman slug his way back into the lineup. Matthew Liberatore, of course, making a case to be a staple in the rotation for the years to come. So this is exactly what the Cardinals wanted in this transition season. Even if it wasn't translating to wins, they were okay. The fact that it is translating to wins, obviously, much better all around.
So speaking of sticking with it, Katie, you mentioned it was a transition season in terms of runway for certain guys, but the Cardinals are tied with the Mets for the most sweeps in Major League Baseball. Have we officially shifted into maybe Sell is completely off the table, in your opinion?
Best record in the National League since May the 4th, Katie.
May the 4th be with you.
Yeah, you know what, guys? Yeah. I think it's fair to say, as we are one day before July, before trade deadline month, that the Cardinals look like legitimate National League contenders. Now, whether that means for a very tight National League Central or an even tighter National League, the wild card picture remains to be seen. But while I can't say the Cardinals Sell is like fully off the table, I think the degree to which they do, I've said this before, you look at a team like what the Detroit Tigers did last year at the deadline, and they traded away some key pieces, don't get me wrong, Jack Flaherty, Andrew Chafin, Carson Kelly, on expiring deals, but it created more room for their upcoming core. And now you see where the Tigers are right now. It's a pretty good place to be. Can the Cardinals do something like that where they do swap someone that has been impactful for this team in order to create another opportunity for somebody else that they believe is in the future and still be a good team? I think so. Here's an obvious one that I think you guys know I'm getting at. This is my speculation, but could the Cardinals trade Eric Fetty to make room for Michael McGreevy? That could certainly be on the table. Does that really qualify as a sell? In my opinion, no, but if we're going to get technical, sure. Do I expect the Cardinals to augment their roster at the deadline? I do at this point. I don't think it's going to be to the degree of a blockbuster deal. They're not going to go full-on Dodgers-Mets, obviously, and nor should they based on what their long-term goals are. But it's fascinating to look at because this trade deadline, I think, is going to be one of the most complex for John Mozeliak because he has a very unique opportunity to improve the club right now and make the Cardinals competitive even more than they already are, but also focus on still bolstering the club. We've said all year long, can they balance runway and results? Well, now they're going to take that same mentality to the trade deadline, and we'll see what happens there.
The one guy that I think is probably most in the limelight in this regard, Katie, because I think everybody in this room agrees with you, and I think most Cardinals fans would agree with you. If you swap out Fetty for McGreevy, I think the results are relatively similar, and now you're giving another young guy that opportunity, and maybe you're able to flip Fetty for some prospects. Like, that makes all the sense in the world. Helsley's where it gets interesting. And
Yep.
I don't know what you do there. My rationale on this has always just been like, I don't think you can be a better team or a similar team if you're trading Ryan Helsley. And since May 4th, I mentioned that date, the Cardinals have the third best bullpen ERA in Major League Baseball. It's a big reason why they're winning these games right now because they played a lot of close games. Selling Helsley makes that less likely to continue. How do you view their current outlook on him as we get closer to the deadline?
It's one big mystery, and I think it's going to continue to be that way as we get closer and closer to July 31st. And I can argue both sides, though I'm in the belief that right now the Cardinals, if they want to compete this year and they want to contend, which has been a stated goal of theirs, even when they announce this transition season, you keep your closer. Now, if the Cardinals keep the closer, should they explore an extension for Helsley, and otherwise they risk giving up nothing or getting nothing for him? That is where things get tricky. Not to mention a new front office taking over, so it's not just one person making this decision. It's technically two. From a just this season standpoint, because that's kind of how we have to break it down, can't see how trading Ryan Helsley would send a good message for the people in that clubhouse, for the players, the young players that have gone out and overperformed expectations and have really made the Cardinals an exciting baseball team, and virtually nobody thought that sentence would ever be said in 2025. I don't know if that sends a good message at all to the players that have really, truly worked their butts off to get this team back on track. Also, I'm not quite sure who the Cardinals have currently that's going to close games. Can Phil Maton do it every now and then? Sure, but he's been fantastic. He's a setup man. They don't really have a true closer in the organization right now. And if they were losing, if they were under 500, I would say the second half is the perfect time to figure out if they do have one. Throw Graceffa in there, throw somebody else, see what they can do in these opportunities. But they're not. They are, by all accounts, a very competitive team with a closer who has struggled and obviously isn't as good as his historic performance last season, but is still one of the best arms in the game in the ninth inning. So if I'm looking at the Cardinals and the short-term goal is to compete, I'm keeping Helsley, but the Cardinals have also said their long-term goal is to invest in the future. I'm not sure what that means for the Cardinals closer.
All right, Katie, we'll get you out of here on this. You have a really good piece up today over on The Athletic. People can go read it in its entirety. It's about Brendan Donovan, his leadership that he has added to this team in 2025. You talk to anybody around the club, and they will rave about Brendan Donovan, not only as a leader, but how he's improved in that regard this season as well, how he's become a leader of basically everybody on the team. What did you learn in your reporting for this piece over on The Athletic on Brendan Donovan's leadership in 2025?
You said it, BK. It's the improvement. And that's not to suggest that Donovan wasn't a good leader before, but it can be daunting as you come in as a 26, 27-year-old, obviously a very high skill set and respected because he plays every day, every position, any spot in the lineup, right? But you had such a heavy veteran presence throughout the club that I think Donovan was still unsure on how best to lead. Leadership is so vague sometimes in baseball. Like, oh, he's a great leader. Okay, what does that mean? And I think that's the question that Donovan was asking himself. And it was funny having this conversation with him. You guys have been around the clubhouse enough to know that Donnie isn't exactly someone who loves to talk about himself. So it was an uncomfortable, I think, a little when we first started, because I don't think he wanted to come across as flashy or arrogant. And that's exactly what he struggled with, is trying to find a leader and be a leader. He didn't want to come across as the loud, obnoxious, brash guy, things that, we totally equate with Brendan Donovan, of course. But he also realized that the leadership style that he had could still be impactful throughout the club, and he just had to feel comfortable in sharing that with others. And you see it now on both sides, whether it's the veterans, whether it's the rookies, the up-and-coming guys. They come to Donovan because they respect his preparation, they respect his work ethic, they respect the way he plays the game. Once Donovan found out that he could share that side of him and lead that way, it seemed to click for him. Now, guys, he has just been instrumental. He's been a fixture for that Cardinals team. He should be an all-star. Hopefully there's good news about that coming up for the Cardinals this year. Across the board, though, improvement has been key. Maybe a more confident, assured version of who he wants to be as a leader and as a player. He's made it very clear, guys, he wants to be in St. Louis for the long haul, and he's off to a great start in terms of establishing a new culture in that clubhouse. It's been very cool to see.
Yeah, that's the guy you need to get re-signed sooner rather than later. Katie, appreciate the time. It's a really good piece over at The Athletic. There's a great anecdote about Sajaci and Donovan and how those two guys specifically have clicked in this story. So if you're a Cardinals fan, highly recommend, if you're not already, subscribing to The Athletic and then going over there and reading that piece from Katie today. Katie, enjoy yourself up in Pittsburgh. We'll talk with you again next week.
You got it, guys, and if it gets swept, just know it wasn't me.
No, that's on me. Katie, appreciate the time as always. Katie Wu joins us each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario.
You were recently in Pittsburgh, weren't you?
I was.
There you go. BKO sometimes can last about a month when he goes to a city.
It lingers like a fart?
Yeah, it lingers like a fart. Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah.
I get that. Yeah.
Louisville's suffering from it right now, probably.
There's probably going to get some bad weather over the next.
I don't know if you saw it, but that bourbon tour you went on, they shut down.
Oh, really?
Completely shut down.
Willett is just gone.
Yeah, they just said, we got to close.
Willett's been around for 150 years. They're like, nope.
We don't know why.
We're out.
We literally just lost all of our money today. We have no idea how that happened.
Louisville, good town. Highly recommend it. We were in Bardstown for most of our trip down there.
Bardstown.
Yeah, Bardstown is gone. But really, really, really enjoyed it. We went to Luxrow. We went to Willett. We spent a little bit of time at a place called Holy Grail Restaurant in Louisville as well. We went to Scratch Brewery on the way out there. So good trip all around. Thanks for asking,
Just
Alex.
shut them all down. All of them.
Coming up next, is Jordan Kyrou going to be shut down in his time with the St. Louis Blues?
What a
We'll talk about it
tease.
here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So the Jordan Kyrou stuff came and went seemingly over the weekend. It was Dobson for Kyrou. That was at least in the headlines. I don't know how real that was, but it sure sounded like the Blues wanted to be involved in the Noah Dobson sweepstakes, and then Dobson said, what if I stayed in the Eastern Conference? So the Blues were eliminated,
Smart.
and then everything seemingly just got real quiet around Jordan Kyrou over the weekend, Alex. There was some buzz yesterday. I think it was Elliot Friedman who threw this out there where he's like, hey, listen, maybe keep an eye on Montreal, keep an eye on Seattle. Both of them have some center depth. That would make some sense. And that felt like more speculation than reporting to me. And I'm not calling out Friedman. I think he's great at his job. But it didn't feel like it was like, hey, Montreal is calling and is working on a deal towards acquiring Jordan Kyrou. I don't think that was what he was talking about. We have about 12 hours before Jordan Kyrou's no-trade clause officially kicks in. And then I think we can just, like, starting tomorrow, not really talk about this in the same way.
Hallelujah.
Do you think that something is still possibly going to happen? Is there something out there that makes sense to you in that regard?
There's stuff that makes sense to me. I just don't know if it makes sense for the other team. Like, I do believe Kyrou's name is out there because you're doing your due diligence if you're Doug Armstrong to see what this player could get you. He told us on our draft show on Friday, like, look, we've got a lot of wingers, and they're all not going to make the team. You deal from an area of strength. You've got a lot of wingers. So what do you do with it? To me, the Islanders rumor and the Dobson thing, it makes sense. You were going after a young defenseman. The Buffalo rumors, I think it was Byram and Peterka. I think it was Byram plus. And the Seattle and Montreal, yeah, that's Friedman wondering because those teams have a lot of centers. But it would make sense if Doug Armstrong's calling and saying, look, we want this centerman from you, and we've got this winger for you. I think what's happening is they're asking for the world for Kyrou. And
As they should.
And if you don't get it, guess what? Cool, we don't need to trade him. If I can get a 25-year-old centerman that fits into my plans as a 1-2 punch with Robert Thomas and I have to give up a 75-point producer, so be it. I'm making my team better. I've got depth, and I'm bringing in a really good centerman. But I'm not just going to trade him for a third-line center to say that I upgraded over Sundqvist. So that's where I think this stands right now. You've got 12 hours. I think the deals have already been presented to teams that the Blues would be willing to trade Kyrou to, and it's a matter of, are you willing to accept our offer? If not, then we're going to go into the season and go into the no-trade clause of saying Jordan Kyrou is a part of this team, so please stop talking about it.
This has always been my question on it is, like, what is the goal with a Kyrou trade? Are you trying, and this is what we talked about whenever Vladimir Tarasenko was potentially in the frameworks of discussions for that offseason as well. Is the goal to get the cap space? Is the goal to just maintain flexibility? So Kyrou's $8 million are off of the books, and you don't have to worry about for that for the next, 6 years on your books, right? And with a full no-trade clause as well. You just have flexibility that otherwise did not exist. If that's the North Star, well, then the return is not necessarily the number one thing that you're looking for. You'd love to get the best return possible, but it's not about maximizing the return so much as it is adding that flexibility, right? That could be one possibility. Another possibility is you just don't think you can win with Jordan Kyrou. And so you're going to go get whatever the best offer is that is out there right now while you can still get that best offer before his no-trade clause kicks in tonight at midnight. That's another possibility. The third possibility is, man, we love Jordan Kyrou. He's 27 years old. He's a consistent 70-point, 30-plus goal producer, and we think we can win with him. But now is the time where we could maximize this asset. So if somebody blows the doors off of us with their offer, well, we have to consider that. We'd be stupid not to, right? The same way that last year, well, yeah, no, nobody uses this RFA status to go offer sheet people, but that's what they do. That doesn't mean that has to be what we do. We're going to go do this to make our team better. So I think those are the three windows that you can choose from if you're the Blues, and I don't know which one they're prioritizing. Genuinely, I have no idea, and I don't think they would tell me even if I asked. So that makes it really hard to figure out, okay, what's the plan? Because depending on which of those three avenues are the North Star, that changes what I think they're willing to take in return for a guy like Jordan Kyrou.
Yeah, I think the playoffs were eye-opening in terms of it was the second postseason where you saw Kyrou, and look, he was effective, but was he a game changer? That's the question you're asking. For me, I believe they're looking at this as we found a Dylan Holloway that made a Kyrou dispensable. If we feel like Kyrou...
I think Snuggie was the guy that made him more...
I think Holloway made it, and then Snuggerud was like, hey, this is another piece. I think Holloway at that point was like, we might have a guy that's a 70-plus point producer, and we've got Kyrou, which is great. They knew Snuggie was going to be good, and then when they saw it, it's like, cool, we can work with this. And Bolduc. Like, they're strong on the wings. And they look at this and they say, we've got Kyrou at $8 million. We have Dvorsky coming, but that might be 3+ years from now, and we don't have anything else. There's no other centerman in our organization that we believe can be top 6, heck, top 9 in terms of Dean and Kaskamaki and Stenberg. These guys are just versatile weapons. And 2019, that was where they always had said, like, look, you are the best team when you're strong right down the middle at the center position. So I think they look at this as Kyrou is our best piece to go find ourselves a 1-2 punch of Thomas and player X. And then Dvorsky down the road as a third-line center, maybe a second-line center, and we're a team that could be dangerous. But the problem is nobody is willing to trade the second-line centers that are young and controllable because they know how hard they are to come by. So I think the rumors are out there because you're getting to July 1st. I think there have been floats of Kyrou's name. I don't think this is a matter of we don't think he fits into our plans long term. I think this is we need to strengthen our team, and he is the best piece to do it.
I just don't know. Like, I'm not willing to go that strong on it. I don't know how they feel about Kyrou and his long-term fit with the organization. I feel like, I don't know, for 5 years now, we've been having the same conversations about Kyrou and what is his game ultimately going to be. You guys know where I stand on Jordan Kyrou. This is not my view on him. I like Kyrou a lot. I think that is the exact kind of piece that you need in order to win in this league because he puts the puck in the back of the net. And eventually, that's got to be the goal, man. In order to win these games, you got to score. Look at the Carolina Hurricanes. Their biggest issue, they don't have a Jordan Kyrou and haven't for like 7 years now. And consistently, they try to find that guy at trade deadlines, and then they leave in the offseason again because they're not willing to pay them. You have that guy. Generally speaking, I would like to keep that guy in the room. But I can also understand if I just open myself up to the other ideas. As I watch the Stanley Cup final year after year after year, there are very few players participating in those games that have a similar style to Jordan Kyrou. Very few players, if any, especially guys that have that kind of a role on their respective rosters. Most of them are bigger, they are stronger on the puck, and they play with more physicality as you get deeper into the postseason. So if you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes and you think to yourself, hey man, in the next 2 to 3 years, I want to be a cup contender again, even if it's not this year. Is Kyrou somebody that will be a part of that? Is he somebody that can be in a top 6 of not just a contending team, a team that gets to the playoffs, but a team that can win the Stanley Cup? If your answer to that is no, you have to do your job right now on seeing what's out there for him and trying to find a piece that can get you closer to that goal or at least provides you flexibility. Like if the Blues traded Jordan Kyrou, Alex, for Shane Wright, that's one of the like rumored things that's out there. I have no idea how much there is actually behind that speculation, but it's out there. I don't know if Shane Wright makes you better. I would argue you're probably worse next year than you were with just Jordan Kyrou on the roster. But could you then, I don't know, this time next year, flip Shane Wright and one of those prospects that you're talking about and your upcoming first-round pick and then go get a star with some of that flexibility that you now have because you don't have an $8 million player on your roster and Shane Wright doesn't have that same no-trade protection? Maybe. Or maybe Shane Wright's just really good and he hasn't developed yet because he's 21 years old and just had a 40-point season. All of these things are just, I would keep this in the back of your mind over the next 12 hours if something does come out that gets you closer to that possibility of Kyrou being elsewhere. Yeah. And we have to keep our minds and our ideas open to how exactly they view this because I don't think we know, honestly.
No, I don't think they know, to be honest with you also. I think they would like to find something. They also know that you can't make a move to get better in one position if it takes you out of the other position. I think this was a matter of due diligence for a guy, and I know the way that Doug Armstrong answered it was, no, it's just another typical day with Kyrou. I do think his name has been out there because you just want to see if somebody's willing to pay something that you're like, what, are you kidding me? You said yes to that? And then you make your team better for the now. They're strong at the wing position. That's where they're going to be dealing from. The question is, are you dealing from it now with an NHL player, or are you dealing from it down the road once some of these junior players, these AHL players, start to get closer to the NHL, and then teams are willing to pounce on those younger players? That's where you're divvying it up right now, and the hard part is, I don't know if any of those guys in the minor league system have any trade value compared to what Kyrou is right now, or will have trade value compared to Kyrou.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. By the way, something to pass along. We've spent way too much time on this. Joel Hofer signed. He signed a contract extension with the St. Louis Blues.
No
2
offer
years,
sheet.
$3.4 million per season. Alex, the Blues will be paying $9.5 million over the next 2 seasons for Benner and Hofer. They will then have Hofer on an RFA contract once again, so they will be able to decide exactly what they want to do then with Joel Hofer at 26 years old, I believe it is. Smart deal. Makes all the sense in the world. You're paying a little bit more than I think they would like to pay to their goaltending tandem, but with the cap going up, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, and you're still paying under 10, which I think when we did this, there were only 3 teams that are paying their tandem more than $10 million. It lines up perfectly. My tinfoil is you're going to start to see more games for Joel Hofer throughout these next couple of years. 1, because you keep Binnington fresh for the playoffs, and 2, you want to see if Hofer can handle the load so that in 2 years, they'll make the decision of, is Hofer our guy of the future, or is the guy in the minors the guy? Or do we move on from Jordan Binnington? That's going to be the questions they deal with for the next 2 years.
Coming up next, the NHL made some significant changes under the new CBA. A couple of them I think fans will love. One of them I think we will ultimately see some backlash to over the first couple of seasons. We'll explain that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat Cleveland Guardians yesterday 7-0 as they sweep Cleveland over the weekend, and they start a 3-game set at the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight. 5:40 will be first pitch. Eric Fedde will be on the mound for St. Louis. Andrew Heaney will get the start for Pittsburgh. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. SEMALondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, so the NHL is making some significant changes under the new CBA. There are a few things that I want to get into here with Alex Ferrario. I think most of these fans are going to enjoy. I think most of this is stuff that, honestly, fans have been calling for over the last few years. So we'll get into that. I do think there is one in particular that will have some unintended consequences, and I don't think fans will like it at all. But we'll get into that here momentarily as well. Alex, first, the thing that fans are going to love. LTIR, they think they found a fix for both the regular season and for the playoffs. I'm going to read this. I hope that it makes some amount of sense to people, and then we can try to break it down to make it as easy as humanly possible to understand afterwards. So this is according to The Athletic. Quote, teams will be allowed to exceed the cap by an amount equal to the prior season's average salary for that player, unless the NHL and NHLPA approve the full amount, which will only happen if there is doubt, or there's no doubt rather, that the player will miss the entire remainder of the season, and that does include the playoffs. Then, that's LTIR during the regular season. In the playoffs, there will be a cap that is introduced that applies only to the 20 players that are suiting up for each game. You can change those players on any given game. You just have to continue to stay under that cap with the 20 players that are suited up on any given game. Quote, in the event that the playoff cap has unintended consequences, the NHL and the PA do have the right to reopen that agreement on this issue. Alex, does this, in your opinion, fix the problem?
Yeah.
Did they fix the loophole?
Yeah, I believe they fixed the loophole because, go back to the 2020-2021 season when Tampa won the Stanley Cup. Kucherov didn't play any games in the regular season. I think he was already an $8 million player. The cap was flat. And that offseason, or that trade deadline, I should say, that was when they went out there and they acquired 3 different forwards, including Blake Coleman, to their team. If Kucherov, when he returned, if they would have had the salary cap, they would have either had to not play Kucherov, or they would have had to sit 2 of their forwards or defensemen, and they would have been short a roster player in the game.
Gotcha.
So what this did is essentially you can go out there and make the move and add that $8 million player to make yourself great in the regular season, but when the guy comes off of LTIR, you have to be cap compliant. So you're either not playing the guy that you acquired, or you're going to be short at least 2 roster players once you start the season. So I think this fixes that problem.
Would it have changed anything for Florida this year? Do you know?
I don't believe so, because I think when they got the money eaten on Seth Jones's contract and the money eaten on Marchand's contract, I think they would have been cap compliant. I didn't look at that one last night, but I believe they would have been cap compliant because that's when they got Seth Jones.
Okay, I wasn't sure on that one. That one felt like could have gone either way.
Yeah. The Kucherov one I remember because they made 2 different acquisitions at that trade deadline of guys that were making north of $4 million. All
right, that is something that, if I'm just going to be totally frank, it didn't bother me the way that it bothered most, and we certainly have had our discussions about it. But loopholes closed now. Cool. Glad we're all on the same point there. Something that is going to make the deadline maybe a little bit more interesting, and I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but it's just, I find it to be interesting. Salary retention will still be allowed in trades, but with a tweak now. A second retention on the same contracts can only happen 75 regular season days after the first one, which nixes the use of that third-party broker at the trade deadline. So to simplify this, if the Blues make a trade for a player, and they can only have 25% of that salary. Like, they can only make it work if they have 25% of that salary on their books. In the previous version of the CBA, let's say they're making a trade with the Penguins, right? The Penguins retain 50% of that salary, and then they send that player through San Jose. San Jose then also eats 50% of whatever the salary was that's left, and then the Blues can take on that salary. Now that can't happen. Now it would just be Pittsburgh that is able to retain salary, and the Blues would either be able to make it work or not under the cap, but that's all that you can do. So I think that's smart. This goes kind of in tandem with the LTIR thing, and when you have the 2 together, I think it makes it more smooth. at the trade deadline. It makes it easier for especially like casual fans to just be able to pay attention to what can and cannot be done at the deadline.
Yeah, I loved this deal too, and I think this makes life a lot easier for all the other teams because you don't see these teams that are bringing in extra brokers to make that LTIR playoff salary cap thing work, because there was a loophole on top of the stipulation that they put into play, because you could still find a way to be cap compliant with the LTIR, but you're getting two teams to eat a lot of money. So yeah, this was another one that I think the general managers made the correct decision in terms of trying to keep it a little bit more even keel throughout.
All right. Next thing up, again, CBA now has been agreed to by the NHL and the NHLPA. This is the first time this has happened, like, in a post-COVID world. So COVID had happened, and then now we're seeing another version of this. For the NHL to be able to do this just behind the scenes, hey, Major League Baseball.
What, they having issues?
Take a page out of their book, please. 84-game season is coming to the NHL starting in, I think, 26 is what they said?
Yeah, starting after this season. So this season coming is the final one in the old CBA.
Do you like that?
I do. I freaking love this because there are going to be 9 preseason games for the Blues this season.
Set aside that.
But
do you like 84 regular season games?
I do, because you're shortening a preseason. You're starting the season faster. You're starting the regular season. Ask any NHL player. After 3 games in preseason, they say these are irrelevant. We need to start the NHL games.
You don't care about the record stuff? No. You don't care about, like, the 82 games is what it's been. That's what it should be?
Nope.
Because there's going to be stuff that changes now.
Yeah.
Like goals in a season and points in a season. That stuff can now, like records can potentially be broken now because there are 2 extra games to be played.
But those 2 extra games are going to be against their division opponents. It's not going to be against other divisions. It's going to be like the Blues are playing 2 more games against the Central Division.
Just making sure we're all on the same page here.
Yep.
I like it.
If you're a Blues fan and like it matters to you on, hey, these guys have scored 30 goals in a season. These guys have reached the 85-point threshold, whatever that might be. Like that stuff is going to change a little bit. That's like something for baseball that fans really care about. There are 162 games and that doesn't change.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you had any. See?
Yeah, that one shouldn't change. But hockey, I mean, they play way too many preseason games. So if I have to do the sacrifice of get 2 extra regular season games and I don't have to worry about the records, and it's 3 preseason games, I'm in.
They play at a minimum 90 games in a season because of the 8 and 9 preseason games that they play.
Right, but none of that stuff counts towards the NHL stats or anything like that. It's been 82 games for like 60 years. So the fact that they're changing that now, I was curious how you guys felt about it and if it mattered to you. I don't care. It's fine by me. It does not bother me one bit. This is what bothers me. And this is, I think, going to be the one thing that maybe fans today don't care too much about. Alex mentioned it. I think down the road, it's going to be something that you look back on and say, it is what it is. I'll live with it. But I don't think you're going to love it. Less practice time leading into the season. To accommodate for the increase in games, training camp will be shortened from 21 days down to 13 days. Less than 2 weeks now for training camp. 18 days for rookies. 1 day off during the first week. Each team will be limited to 4 exhibition games. Players with at least 100 career games, so basically 2 years in the league, will be capped at 2 exhibition games. So you get 2 games and 2 weeks to start up for the season. Boom, ready to go. Let's go play some hockey. Oh boy, I remember when the NFL did this. They changed it to where like practice time was severely limited in the offseason, and then training camp was shortened. The practices are a little bit different, and the play severely went down in the first month of the regular season. Like you watch an NFL September game, boy, is it ugly, especially for the offensive lines. It takes a while for teams to really become the fully formed versions of themselves. I think you're going to see some of that in the NHL. Doesn't mean it's going to be horrific. I just think the play is going to take a step back in the first month compared to what it used to be. So I would say be prepared for that. That doesn't mean the NHL sucks now. I'm not calling your favorite sport out. I just think that this is going to have unintended consequences, and I'm very interested to see what it looks like.
I actually disagree with that. I think you're not going to see anything. In fact, I think you'll probably see maybe a little bit more of, I don't want to say a ramp up. I think goaltending is probably going to suffer in this. 2 games for most of these players is plenty. I mean, I've talked with at least 10 guys during preseasons and say, like, what is a sweet spot? He says, if I play 3 games, I know exactly what I need to do. The timing's down. I mean, most of these guys start training and practices and everything.
Almost half of the training camp.
Most of these guys don't even play more than 3 preseason games.
Set aside the games. I'm just talking about being on the ice with your team, dude.
I don't think that has any problems. I think most of the time, all of these guys are ramped up with this. I think, yeah, you're talking about maybe chemistry slipping, but goaltending is always terrible in the first month of the season. You see an excelled amount of offense in the early portion of the season because goaltending takes some time to mix up with it. But
so do we think training camp doesn't matter?
No, I'm not saying training camp doesn't matter. You don't need it to be 2.5 weeks of training camp.
Okay.
You don't need all of this travel of sending rosters. I think what's going to happen is you're probably going to see these training camp rosters be decreased a lot faster than what it's been before, because typically those first 2 or 3 preseason games are just filled with dudes that are going back to the OHL or going back to their juniors team.
I'm not even talking about the preseason games. Like, set that aside. If we talked as much as we did about how important it was for Jim Montgomery to have like that quick period where he was able to like run Camp Monty. And like, if we place value in that, I think we also have to place value in the practices that they're able to have on the ice. And now you have basically a week and a half less of those practices on the ice with your roster. And like, yes, a lot of your team remains the same year over year. There are changes, like significant changes for most teams in the offseason. And maybe I'll be proven completely wrong on this. I'm open to the idea. I remember when the NFL did this, it had serious consequences for the performance of players on the field. And you saw the lack of just crispness early on in the season. I think you could see something similar in the NHL. There is no more player physical test. Like they're not checking cardio or whatever the way that they used to. I think it's 10 fewer days of practices and 1 fewer preseason game. That I'm not all that worried about. But my prediction is that we will see a drop in the quality of hockey for the first 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum of the regular season. Yeah. That's my current prediction for this.
I'm not as worried about it because I think you see it's not the same to where it is the lines, the defensemen, the communication. It's the goaltending. The goaltending is always very shaky in the first, 3 weeks of the NHL regular
matters
season.
For lines.
I think it does matter, and I'm not trying to degrade that, but I think you just have to go into camp knowing, okay, we have to get these lines going a little bit sooner. Because typically, like when training camp starts, we were out there last year for training camp, and you've got placeholders all across the board, right?
You've got a rookie playing with 2 veterans.
We have to do the classic game of, okay, who's the pair? Let's see if we can figure out who the pair is. You just have to abandon that now, or you just got to get to it quicker. And I think those teams will adjust to that. I think your goaltending is still going to be the biggest issue in the first couple of weeks of the regular season, and that's been an issue during the current 82-game season. So I'm not overly concerned about it.
Last thing here. Contract term is maxed out now at 6 or 7 years. So if you're a free agent, it's now down to 6 years from the 7 previously. And if you're on the team already, 7 years is the max. It used to be 8. Not a huge difference. Yeah. I don't know how much this really changes. I will say there's one place where it has a significant effect, and it's for guys that are free agents right now or next year. If you're a free agent next season prior to the CBA kicking in, your current team has a significant advantage in re-signing you to that 8-year term because everybody elsewhere is only able to offer you 6. Your team is able to offer you 8 over the life of that contract. That is a boatload of money. One guy that immediately comes to mind for this is Kirill Kaprizov. Mm-hmm. Kaprizov is somebody that is far more likely to stick with Minnesota now than maybe he would have been 2 weeks ago because of these new parameters being put into place. If he cares about money at all. And if we're being honest, most people do care about money, at least to some degree. Might not be the ultimate deciding factor, but it's something nonetheless. So I've got no issues with this, but I do think it's an interesting kind of trickle-down effect for the next year of negotiations for some players.
I brought this up on Friday. It makes me want to try and get it, and I know it's not a priority for him. It makes me want to do 8-year contracts for Broberg and Holloway now.
Sure.
Because now I've got 8 years compared to 6, and if you do the Ridge deal, which I think is probably what they're going to settle on, you do, 2 to 3 years? And then when you get up to the next time you're ready to negotiate, you can only go the max of 7. I am more open now to extending Broberg and Holloway to those 8-year deals because I think they're going to age very well.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. I have a slight Jordan Kyrou update. I'll give that to you guys. It'll be a little different kind of junk drawer today here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, I've got a Jordan Kyrou update for you, kind of. The Montreal Canadiens, according to Pierre LeBrun, have continued to show interest in St. Louis Blues winger Jordan Kyrou, as have, quote, several other teams, end quote. Kyrou's full no-trade clause kicks in on Tuesday. The Blues have been talking to teams to determine the extent of the market for him before deciding whether or not to pull the trigger to keep him once his no move kicks in.
It's a no trade. We don't give out no moves.
If the Canadiens are able to acquire Kyrou, which would require, quote, multiple assets going to St. Louis, end quote, Montreal would also need to clear out more cap space this summer to make all the math work, or at least have the cap in place that makes Montreal more comfortable entering next season. So, long story short, Montreal would really like to acquire Jordan Kyrou. Don't blame them. And if they were to make a deal like this, they would have to give up multiple assets to St. Louis, and they'd have to figure out the cap. So it seems super simple, and it probably will happen, right, Alex?
No, I don't think so at all. This is the part that baffles me with Montreal. Like, look at their roster, man. They don't have anything that the Blues would want. Like, they're stacked with wingers and bottom six centers.
I'll take Suzuki.
Yeah, and that's what I think this is. The way that Pierre framed it was like, yeah, the Canadians have been very adamant about we need a top six forward who's a difference maker. Cool. They call the Blues up and say, we want Kyrou. We'll take Nick Suzuki. Bleep. You're not doing that. But unless there's a three-way deal that's to be made here and the Blues are getting a centerman from another team.
Noah Dobson?
After he just gotcha, Noah. We really wanted Kyrou. You just signed the extension.
The no trade hasn't kicked in yet.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Maybe that could be it.
Can you imagine?
The Blues are not acquiring.
He signed a $9.5 million.
Dobson would be pissed.
Is he from Montreal, too?
He's from that area. I don't know if he's specifically from Montreal, but
that would be a sure kick.
I mean, hey, Noah, you signed that, right?
Yeah, you're good, man. Your no trade doesn't kick in until July 1st. See ya. Like, you're not acquiring Patrick Laine. They're probably not giving up Suzuki, Caulfield, or Slavkovsky. And then their defense, you're asking for probably Lane Hudson, the dude that just won the Calder Trophy or was second in the Calder Trophy. But, like, you're not...
Can I ask you a stupid question?
Sure.
It's a really stupid question. Don't get mad at me for asking it. I'm just genuinely asking.
We don't get mad on this show.
Could the Blues just say, like, hey, we'll take, like, Kirby Dach, first-round pick, and one of your young defensemen?
Ugh. Could they? Sure. I think that's a terrible decision. Kirby Dach is a third-line center, and he's... Okay.
The Blues need one of those.
Yeah, they do. Not for the top six winger that they have on their team, and first-round pick does nothing for this team. They've made it very clear that they're done with accumulating assets, and as you saw at the draft over the weekend, first-round picks don't get traded very often. And then a young defenseman, I don't think they have a defenseman that matches what the Blues need, because the Blues made it pretty clear with the Dobson rumors and the Byram rumors, if we can upgrade our defense, we will. I mean, other than the dude that was just in the Calder Trophy conversation, I don't think they have anybody that's an upgrade. This Montreal thing, to me, says Montreal is desperate to find a top six winger, and they're calling the Blues because the Blues are willing to offer Kyrou. But I think the moment the Blues say what they want, Montreal's like, this isn't going to work. Unless Seattle's involved.
I was about to say, if that's the case, this stuff would have died down by now.
Maybe Montreal's just desperate. They keep bugging the girl to go out with them. Maybe she'll say yes at some point.
Doesn't work.
Maybe it's possible, right? Maybe Montreal is like, hey, we need this out there because our fan base is really rabid and we need them to know we're trying. And if they know we're trying, hey, at least we tried. Cardinals sometimes have this stuff kind of get out there where it's like, hey, we're in the mix.
It's the only time they leak stuff.
I don't know, man. I find it really interesting.
I do too.
It makes me wonder, would the Blues be willing to take more of a futures package?
Yeah.
Because Kirby Dach, first-round pick, that kind of stuff, that would be more futures-oriented. And when I heard Doug Armstrong speak most recently, I got the sense they're still kind of looking for that 21 to 25 age range. And
now, it could be this.
I don't know.
It could be this defenseman that they drafted a few years back. I know a lot of people are bringing it up on the text line. This was the guy that was drafted in Nashville when we were there, T-Bone, this David Reinbacher, 20-year-old right-shot defenseman who has not played in the NHL, but last year in the AHL played 10 games and then played for him in the playoffs and was good for him. Maybe that's the route you're going. You're really trying to upgrade defense, and then you bring in Kirby Dach and hope that he can take a step like Dylan Strome did when he got to Washington. To me, that is a risk But maybe if they do that move, that tells you that they were more concerned about Kyrou being on this long term than they were worrying about what's coming back the other way.
Or they view these guys as potentially being a part of the future. Now you have an extra $5 million to work with. Maybe you go add a winger via free agency, or you trade for one or something else, right? Or maybe you view these players as, hey, we'll keep them for a year, see what it looks like, make some decisions, and then next year use something as trade chips to go get us that really big-time player that we're trying to acquire. I don't know. I like presenting these options because I think this is probably what they have to be doing inside of the room. I think Dobson's probably the guy, right? Like, ideal world, we trade Kyrou for a player that we think immediately makes us better. Maybe they view Dobson as being that player. And now we're in okay, what do? Do we just keep him? Do we go out there and look at future trades? Like guys that will be on the roster now, but more impact the future than they do their here and now? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, do they have interesting pieces? Sure. But do they have pieces that make you 5 to 10% better this season if you trade Kyrou? Other than Caulfield, I don't believe so.
Maybe not, but could you trade Kyrou, go get Reinbacher, go get Kirby Doc, and then sign, I don't know, whoever your favorite defenseman is on the market? Does that make you 5 to 10%?
Maybe not the defenseman. Maybe if you go sign a winger, but I think you're talking about Besser or Ehlers. Sure. Those are the wingers that you're signing.
Are you 5 to 10% better now?
That you are, but you're also in cap hell because you're paying one of those wingers $8-9 million, where the money's going to go towards Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. On top of you're bringing in a Kirby Doc who's an RFA after the season.
I don't know.
Yeah, my tinfoil is if Montreal is calling about it, I wonder if the Blues are working the phone to see if they can find another team. Can Montreal get Kyrou? The other team give the Blues their centerman, and the other team gets assets from Montreal. Yeah, Kirby Doc and David Reinbacher, so all three teams win. Like, that is a potential opportunity. The weird thing, though, is like, if Montreal is calling the Blues, I haven't heard any other team that's willing to get into the conversation yet.
It sounds like Seattle and Montreal are the two teams that I've heard even connected in this over the last 24 hours.
11 more hours.
Coming up next, are Alec Burleson and Nolan Gorman playing themselves into everyday roles? And if so, what does that mean for the Cardinals now? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. In or out coming up here in about 10 minutes. If you guys have a scenario, we'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. By the way, I would imagine you're in, Alex, on Adam Sandler coming to St. Louis on October 17th. He'll be playing live at Enterprise Center. I do have tickets.
Oh.
Adam Sandler on sale now. You can find all the details and a bonus chance to win tickets at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. But at the end of the show today, be sure that you're tuning in all the way through the end of the show here on BK and Ferrario. And if you are, we're going to give you a chance right here to score 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler on October 17th. So be sure to stay tuned here on BK and Ferrario. Alec Burleson, Nolan Gorman both had big weekends for the Cardinals. Both have had a big month for the Cardinals now, and they seem to be making a case to stick in the lineup. Alex, there's been an opportunity that's opened up for both of them with Jordan Walker being down, Ivan Herrera being down. Now you've got the DH plus a corner outfield spot to work with on any given day. Have they earned the right to continue to be in this lineup, though, even when one or both of those guys return, Alex?
Yes. Specifically, like I'm looking at Alec Burleson, to me, that man has earned the opportunity to be an everyday corner outfielder for the rest of the season. There's no more of this, well, he shouldn't probably hit against lefties. No, I don't care. He's out there he's provided you great defense when he's been in right field for you. And, I mean, just look at what his bat has done over the last month. It has been one of the impact bats for this team. It's been Ivan Herrera-esque in terms of the early portion of the season. So, yeah, Alec Burleson to me is a guy that I look at and I say, this is a core member of this team's moving forward. And whether it's Jordan Walker, hey, man, you're just going to be a bat that gets occasional opportunities, which I've been in the camp of don't do that. Yeah. Or it's Lars Nootbaar. Alec Burleson is in one of those positions moving forward. Nolan Gorman, I'm a little indifferent on. I know the bat is heating up, and I know this is a longer sample size than what we saw last year. I also know that the moment I jump on the Nolan Gorman train is when it just completely goes off the rails and he goes back to being what he was. I think his bat deserves to be in the lineup right now. The question for him is how long can you keep that train moving north? And that's where I guess they'd have to decide if this is a fixed thing or if this is just a hot streak.
Yeah, I agree. Burleson's a guy that appears to have locked himself into everyday playing opportunities. I mean, he's hitting lefties, he's crushing right-handed pitching, and honestly, like defensively, he looks fine out there in right field.
He's looked
above average.
Really good.
Better than Jordan Walker.
So like right there, that guarantees me, okay, he's locked in to that spot in right field. I think Nootbaar stays in left. Gorman's the one that I have a tough time with because I agree with you on the sentiment of, hey, I've seen this before. He gets on a hot month, and then he goes through just an unbelievable, awful month and goes through a month of cold spell. I'm also open-minded to, like, okay, well, maybe this is different this year. The problem is like, even if it is different this year, I still don't know where you're playing him because at some point then Donovan's going back to second base. Nootbaar's still in left field for me. He just continues to be the odd man out and is continuing to be the guy that where it's like, man, I'd love to create playing time for you, but we just talked about it. You're happy you kept Nolan Arenado. I don't see the role for Nolan Gorman outside of being like this left-handed bat that can provide some pop off the bench when you're at your full strength.
I agree with that. I think Gorman's opportunity is until Ivan Herrera returns. That's really when things start to dry up for him. Because with Walker, you can figure out the way to switch guys in and out of the corner outfield spots. Walker gets a couple of days off. He's kind of like your fourth outfielder in this scenario. He's in the Garrett Hampton role that Hampton's been playing in. Man, Hampton's been playing a lot lately. He's just
Taylor Mauter 2.0.
Keeps going out there. It's the right move. It's just, woo.
Sorry, Garrett.
Can we try some JC in the outfield maybe?
No, he can't. He can't play the outfield, man. It's been second base in the minor league system.
So anyways, on the Gorman side of things, Gorman has a spot in those scenarios where he's either playing at second base or at DH. It's open for him while you still have Ivan Herrera on the IL. When he comes back, things get a little more difficult, but yeah, we got some time until we get there. Maybe Gorman's not hitting when we get there. Maybe his hot stretch is another week or so. The thing with Nolan Gorman is you just have to capitalize whenever he's there. And then whenever he goes cold again, hey, Gorman, go down to the cages, figure this out.
This was fun.
We appreciate everything. The home runs were really great in the month of June. We had 6 of them. We'll take that every day of the week. When you're ready to go again, you let us know, and then we'll go get the next month where we have 6 home runs. The value of a guy like Nolan Gorman is when he gets hot, dude, he can carry your lineup for a few weeks stretch of time. Very few players are that explosive with the bat. Gorman has that ability, and even fewer players on this specific team have that ability.
So what you're saying is these things kind of work themselves out.
It tends to work that way.
Good. Yeah. It's just like when you get a guy back at the trade deadline from injury, it's just like making a trade.
Burleson's the one to me that's more interesting because I agree with you guys. Like he looks the part of a corner outfielder every day. He's hitting well enough. He's playing good enough defense, and that could potentially change some things for this team.
He's your slug right now. Like over the last month,
really good player.
Over the last month, he's almost like slugging 600 for you. He's got 12 extra base hits. Like this is the slug that we've talked about. And again, I can understand that he's not as great against lefties, although like Tebow mentioned, it's been getting better as of late. But, man, I know for a fact that even if against the occasional lefty he struggles, for a righty, that guy is going to mash for you. He's a middle-of-the-order bat right now.
I got into a fight with somebody on Twitter the other day.
Fist fight?
No, just an argument. And
did they not like your poll that you put out?
No. We were talking about Alec Burleson, and it wasn't really like a fight so much, like a fisticuffs or anything like that. But it was just a disagreement on who Alec Burleson is and what he can be. But it's like, hey, Burleson's having a career year. Good for him, but that's probably the kind of piece that you'd want to trade. I'm just not totally convinced that this is a career year for Burleson. What if he's just a really good hitter? I don't know if he's forever going to be an 800 OPS guy. I have no idea. But I think he absolutely has that kind of potential. He's 26 years old. Could he be this for the next 4 or 5 years? Yeah, I really don't see why not. He hits the ball pretty hard consistently. He does not whiff. He does not chase as much as he once did. Yeah, the walk rate isn't as high as you'd like, but man, different guys win different ways. And Burleson's ability to win, the superpower, as we talked about last week with the Cardinals assistant general manager, Rob Serfolio's, guy can make contact and impact the ball in a serious way consistently. Very few players have that kind of a profile. Burleson does. And now that he's decent defensively out there, I don't know, man, I'd like to see this for a little while longer. Like, not just for this year. I'd like to see it for a while. Let me see what it looks like in 2026 and potentially even beyond. He's that kind of player to me.
Yeah, his number one similarity score on Baseball Reference, which just looks at the numbers, compares it on based on where you are in age, is Josh Naylor, and I can maybe see
JD
that.
Martinez is third.
Oh, then that's a fun one.
I throw that out there. I really like JD Martinez,
but like Naylor's one that I can kind of potentially see. I don't know if he'll get to the home run power because he's gotten to 31 homers once in his career. But, like, he's a constant, like, when he has great years, he's hitting around 300. He's getting on base because of it, and then he's adding a little bit of pop with his slug. Like, if I said he became, like, 2022 version of Josh Naylor, 20
That's
home
what he
runs.
is this year.
Yeah, 20 home runs. He'll hit for a better average than 256. So, we'll say, like, 270, 325 on base, and, like, a 450, 460 slug. I could totally see that being what Alec Burleson is.
That's what he is right now.
Yeah,
We're watching it.
I think that to your point on can there be a more than this just being his career year, I think it's possible. I think it's potentially there. And when you say like Josh Naylor's a comp, I can totally see that kind of being the path that he kind of takes.
Coming up in 15 minutes, was the Dobson situation a unique opportunity for the Blues, or are they really trying to upgrade on the blue line? We'll talk about that coming up in 15 minutes. In or out, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. That's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Ooh,
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Let's start out with this, boys. In or out, the St. Louis Cardinals will trade one of their relievers at this year's deadline.
I'm going to say, forgot about Helsley. Thought he was doing.
Kind of a big
I thought he was doing the other ones. I think I'm still going to say in.
What if they traded Maton?
Oh, whoa.
Oh, that guy's supposed to help you.
I would not do that.
Helsley.
That's what I'm saying.
We need that
He's
guy.
your next closer.
I just wonder what the market would be for somebody like that. I have to imagine it'd be pretty significant.
Oh,
but
sure,
also, Major League Baseball said, we all hate you. We don't think you're good.
Well, now they'll
Now, though.
The rest of his contract for the rest of the year is probably like less than league minimum.
Yeah, and if you're another team, you got to capitalize it now because next year it probably won't be this good. I'm going to say in still. I think they move Helsley.
I'm going to say out, but I don't feel very confident in that answer.
No, I'm like 50-50.
When Katie keeps bringing up the idea of doing the Tigers route, I can see you trade Fetty, you got the replacement in McGreevy. Now, I would argue they still need to upgrade that rotation, or October's going to be quick. But they don't have an internal replacement for Helsley, right? Like, she threw out Graceffo. Graceffo's definitely not ready for that role, especially if you're in a playoff race. So
Graceffo's barely ready to be at the big leagues, much less in a closing situation for a playoff contender.
And
he might be that next year, but he's not that yet.
And they've got a lot of big arms that are, like, fun that you could maybe see. Like, O'Brien's another one.
Did you need a cigarette yesterday, too? Because I sure did after that performance.
I didn't, but I can see where they've got a couple arms that are interesting. You just can't do that when you're in a playoff race, though. So I'm going to say out. I think they will hold on to their relievers. They will trade from their rotation.
That's where I'm at, too. I'm out. Alex?
Guys, in or out by the end of this week, the Blues will have a new forward on their roster.
In. I don't know what it'll be, but I think I'm in. I think they'll get somebody.
Yeah, I'll say in as well. I'm kind of BK. I don't know if it's going to be like something splashy. I don't know if it's going to be like a one of those free agents like Cody Glatt. Well, he just got a qualifying offer, but like someone like
well,
that.
Not yet. Friedman basically said it's going. They don't put the qualifying offers out until 4:00 today. But Friedman said that because of how much interest around the league is out there,
fake news, T-Bone.
The Devils are like, hey, we're probably going to qualify this guy.
My bad.
It's all right. I do fake news all the time.
Yeah, I'll say in. They're going to make a move.
T-Bone?
Guys, in or out, the Cardinals will trade one of Nolan Gorman or Jordan Walker at this year's trade deadline to upgrade the roster.
Out. I think eventually they make one of those moves, but I previously thought maybe at the deadline. Not for Walker, but potentially for Gorman. I think you want that piece. If you truly view yourself as a contender and you're building your roster accordingly, dude, Nolan Gorman coming off of the bench in a big spot against a right-handed pitcher late in a game, it's not a bad chip to play, even if it's like Victor Scott that he's taking that at-bat for, right? You like Scott against righties, fine, but if I've got a spot where I need some power, I'm getting that from Nolan Gorman, so I'll extract that value this year the rest of the way, and then in the offseason, I'll talk to some teams that could potentially have something out there. One thing that I've been thinking about lately, the Kansas City Royals are desperate for any kind of hitting help, and it's not just for this year, but for years to come. They have like 3 guys that can hit in their lineup. It's really bad right now. They've got some really intriguing pitchers and guys that are veterans that could help the Cardinals. That's a team that does make some sense to me if there is a Gorman trade to be made at the deadline. But I'll say they don't do that. I think they wait till the offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's the offseason as well, so I'll say I'm out on this one. I think the offseason is when you strike, and my gut tells me it'll be Gorman.
Oh, I'm leaning in. And like I lean more towards Gorman. I'm getting more on the train of trade Jordan Walker while there's some value. But I think they're going to look to upgrade it. Like if you're a buyer, to me, like what are they trading away? What is their best piece that they're going to be willing to part with? And I think it might be Gorman. I get what you're saying.
I've got a picture for you in that scenario.
Michael Wacha.
How would you feel? No, that's not the one that I was going with, but Wacha would be interesting as well. Seth Lugo has 1 more year left on his deal at $15 million. He's at $15 million for this year as well. He has a 2.7 ERA coming off of a 3.0 ERA last year. Would you trade Nolan Gorman, possibly a little more, for Seth Lugo?
Yeah. Because, like, as much as you're talking about, I agree.
And he's like 100 years old, but
I was going to say, for a 35-year-old pitcher?
He just but a number.
He's a stud, though, man. He's figured
but
something
you know
out.
it's about to break at some point.
Well, see,
Probably.
I think like there are pitchers that can pitch into their 40s, and I'm not saying that he's going to be this guy, But I am all in on that move. I would trade Gorman in a heartbeat. Sure, maybe I don't have a left-handed bat that's coming off my bench for some thump. I think they need more of a right-handed bat than the left-handed bat on their bench.
Agreed.
I would do that move because now I've got a legitimate 1-2-3 for the playoffs in Gray, Lugo, and Matthew Liberatore. That's the kind of 1-2-3 punch that gives you a fighting chance when you get to October.
Somebody says on the text line, Seth Lugo is the new Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton's another guy that I would have some interest in if I'm the Cardinals.
I brought him up a couple weeks ago, and you guys were like, no way you're doing that.
He's been really good.
He's figured it out. And Charlie Morton is the exact kind of starter that the Cardinals like to acquire at the deadline.
40-year-old pitcher.
Old, but he's a little different in this regard. He's not Jordan Montgomery, but the way that Jordan Montgomery had sneaky good swing and miss stuff, that's Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton still throws hard. He's still striking out 10 batters per 9 innings. And the ERA is like, it's bloated. All of the underlying stuff suggests, been a little unlucky. Might be better if he gets a change of scenery situation. So in front of this defense, at that park, I actually think that would make a lot of sense for the Cardinals if they traded for a guy like Charlie Morton. All right, let's go to the text line. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, in or out, the Blues will sign one of Jack Roslovic or Pius Suter. Or Pius Suter.
Out. I don't think Roslovic is... That was like one that I was like, hey, this is interesting. And the more I've heard, it's like, oh, no, the guy can't play center and he's not good. Out on that one. I think Suter is going to be getting... I think he is the sticker shock poster child for this offseason, and I don't buy it, so I'm out.
I think I'm out as well. Roslovic would be the one that I would lean more towards. I don't think they're going to be in on the Suter market. I love the player. I think he fits what the Blues are wanting to build, but he feels like he is, to Alex's point, going to be the one that has the sticker shock to him, and they don't want to do that.
Out and out. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. Guys, in or out, just very bare bones basic one. The Cardinals will make the playoffs. I'm in. We're back, baby.
You want the hat?
No, we're not that far.
Oh, okay.
Give me a couple weeks.
I mean, you're comparing them to 2005, so I just assume we were there. I'll say I'm in on this one, man. The Padres and the Giants, I'm thinking they're going to be great, and like they have just woof. And then that Cubs series that they played this weekend, like that's going to be a massive one if you can find a way to get 2 of 3, because now you're talking NL Central still. So I'll say I'm in.
I think what you said there, Alex, by the way, is a really important factor here. The National League just has not run away from the Cardinals the way that I thought it would. No. The Mets have really come back down to earth. The Padres have just been fine this year. The Giants' offense has not taken a step since trading for Rafael Devers.
Now,
so you look around the NL, and all these teams are playing basically the same way as you. Yeah, I mean, I think the Cardinals are better.
Now, all 3 of those teams, I'll include Phillies in this one as well, 4 teams, all 4 of these teams are going to make significant upgrades at the trade deadline, which is why I'm still kind of a little hesitant, because I don't know if you can match whatever upgrade those teams are going to do.
Totally fair.
Yeah, I'll say in. I thought it was going to take like 92 wins to make the playoffs this year. And because the Padres and the Mets are now going through it, I think that bar has slightly been lowered to where I think the Cardinals are, 85, 87 win team right now. They can make enough upgrades to potentially get into that 90 win category, which would put them in.
Let's see here. They're at a 553 win percentage. Carry the 2.
Who are you calculating? Cardinals over there?
Add the 1.
This is like my math on the
90 wins is what their current pace is.
Cardinals? Yeah.
They're currently on pace for 90 wins.
And I would take the under on that right now. Like, I would say they're probably more slightly below that. But again, you make a couple moves at the deadline, they could totally be in that spot.
From the 636, in or out, Vegas was definitely tampering with Mitch Marner.
Ow, no way.
And every team is tampering, guys. Yeah. Allegedly.
It's just the one that can actually pull off a sign-and trade before free agency. Toronto was like, fine, please do it, because you were going to give us a ton of assets for the tampering.
I respect what Toronto's doing here. They're effectively saying, all right, you want to sign Mitch Marner? Cool. If you sign him and we don't do a sign-and trade, we're filing tampering charges. Or you can give us Nick Wall. Your call.
Plus more. There's going to be more.
Your call. You get to choose. You'll either be docked by the NHL, multiple draft picks, or you can give us Nick Wall, who you have to move anyways. Your call. I respect. It is such a great move by Toronto.
That's called leverage.
That being said, though, every team in the NHL allegedly does stuff just like this. That's why guys sign a minute after free agency begins.
Except St. Louis. They wait until the free agent market shows itself, and then they go in. Honestly.
It is crazy how we know which teams are interested in which players and what the markets are going to be for said players. And We're like 24 hours away from free agency beginning. It's crazy to me. I don't know how that happens unless maybe there were some numbers that were thrown around.
Mitch Marner's like,
they'll be shocked to hear this. This happens in the NBA as well because they have the same thing.
I just love how, like, 3 days ago we were like, Mitch Marner says he's going to take 2 to 3 weeks into free agency to decide where he wants to go. He wants to be wined and dined. He's going to sign and trade with the Vegas Golden Knights.
It was also going to take 4 years 2 days ago, and now he's back to 8. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Elliot Friedman said, the only reason you do a sign and trade is because he wants 8 years, and now he wants 8 years.
Yeah, that's called tampering, ladies and gentlemen.
314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line. 4 in or out. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll give you a shot to score 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler. That's coming up on October 17th at Enterprise Center. Can't get these tickets just anywhere, but you can get them right here on 101 ESPN throughout the week. TMA will have an opportunity. We'll have an opportunity. And then the Fastlane will have an opportunity every day this week. So be sure to stay tuned right here to 101 ESPN for your chance to win. Coming up next, the Blues seemingly were really in on Noah Dobson. He got a massive contract. He is a very young, very skilled defenseman. Was that just a unique situation for them where they viewed the player as too good to not get into? Or are they really trying to upgrade this blue line going into the offseason? We'll ask Alex about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals swept the Cleveland Guardians over the weekend, and tonight they start a 3-game set at the Pittsburgh Pirates. 5:40 will be first pitch. Andrew Heaney will be on the mound for Pittsburgh. Eric Fetty will get the start for St. Louis. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, alongside Alex and T1 on BK, if you guys have missed anything from the show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page after the show today. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. That show is sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is also sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. And if you're listening on the app coming up here in about 10 minutes or so, or if you're listening on YouTube or on the radio, wherever it may be, in 10 minutes, we'll give you a shot to score 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler. That is coming up on October 17th, so stay tuned for that opportunity. Okay, Alex, so the Noah Dobson situation came and went over the weekend. At first, it was like, holy cow, the Blues really might get Noah Dobson? Is that really going to happen right now? And then, no, they crushed our dreams. I think it was Pierre LeBrun who said, hey, he wants to stick in the East. I don't know why.
Yeah, technically, Noah crushed our dreams.
Yeah, Dobson told New York, I don't want to re-signed with a Western Conference team, which eliminated all of one teams that was in the Western Conference. That was us.
Son of a biscuit.
So it was Columbus or Montreal. He ends up going to Montreal. They make the deal. He gets $9.5 million. Now that dream is dead, do you think that the Blues looked at that as, hey, there's a 25-year-old defenseman with like 60-point potential. He's big. He's exactly what we're lacking on the right side. These guys are really hard to find. We can't miss out on this opportunity. We've got to try on this. Was that it? Or do you think it was we're looking to upgrade on the blue line this offseason, and this is a guy that is currently available. Let's start there. Because that would mean something significant for the next 24 hours for the Blues as well, of them still trying to upgrade on the blue line. How do you think they viewed this situation?
Yeah, I think it was the first one. I think they viewed this as there is a 25-year-old defenseman that some view as a top pair potential who is available, and we have the opportunity to go acquire him. Like that's core setting. That's a core setting trade. Like you would have made that trade. And I know Grant has just completely swayed me out on the Noah Dobson conversation, but there are some that look at him and say, that's a top pair guy. You're having Dobson, Broberg, Parayko, Fowler as a top 4 for the next however many years. But really the selling point is Broberg and Dobson as your left and right-handed defenseman moving forward. Those just don't happen very often. So yeah, there is a once in a lifetime opportunity to go get a right-handed defenseman who put up 70 points a couple of years ago. Let's see if we can go acquire him. I don't think this is actively searching for a right-handed defenseman. Now the Blues were tied to Bo Byram as well, but I also think this could fall into the same conversation of like, look, he's 23, 24 years old. He's viewed as a top pair potential defenseman. Let's see if we can go acquire him. I think that one, though, you needed more to sweeten the pot than just trading Kyrou for. That's the only route that I think this team is looking to fix their defense. It's, look, if we can't go out there and acquire the centerman that we believe makes us better, is there a defenseman that is night and day better than what we have that makes us one of the best defensive teams in the Western Conference, if not the National Hockey League? That's when you start talking about those trades.
The top defensemen on the right side that are available on the market, Alex.
You ready? Other than Ekblad.
Aaron Ekblad.
Yeah,
he's 29 years old. He's projected to get about $8 million per year. Nate Schmidt, 33 years old, projected to get $3 million per season.
I liked Nate Schmidt like 5 years ago, so not anymore.
That's the top of the market.
Yeah, our boy Dante Fabro signed for a 4x4, which great deal for Columbus. Yeah.
Gavrikov is out there. He's a left-handed defenseman. Provorov, who we've talked about in the past, is out there. He's 28 years old. $7 million per year is his market right now. There's some talk about him potentially going back to Columbus, though, I think. Orlov is out there, but he's 100 years old as well.
Burns, 100 years old.
Yeah. That's it. It's Ekblad or bust, and they're probably not going to be in on Ekblad.
Yeah, no, I doubt that you're in on Ekblad with this one. Yeah, you're talking trade, and the only way you're bringing in a defenseman, in my opinion, is if you're bringing somebody in that's in the same age range as Broberg. Like you're bringing in a 24, 25-year-old. I know a lot of people have brought up Brant Clark from L.A. L.A. has made it clear they're not trading him. New Jersey, Simone Nemec. I don't think New Jersey's trading that guy either. So there's just not anything out there, which is why the Dobson things came to light, because, look, it's a 25-year-old defenseman that plays the side we are desperate for. see if we can pull this trade off, and it didn't fall into fruition. And so now it's just back to the drawing boards of we're fine coming back with the same defense. We'd love to upgrade, but it's got to be a clear upgrade over what we already have.
All right, we're less than 24 hours away from free agency.
Yes.
Tomorrow, we will be at the Centene Community Ice Center, where the St. Louis Blues will be on the ice for their development camp. And the backdrop to all of that will be Doug Armstrong probably monitoring the phones to see what is out there free agency-wise. In your mind, Alex, who makes sense? Like who, as we're, 21 hours away right now, who would you see come across the screen, Blues sign player X? And you think to yourself, yeah, that makes sense. I saw that one coming. How many players are on that list for you?
3. Cody Glass, which we'll find out in about 2 hours if he's actually going to be available, because he's either going to get a qualifying offer from New Jersey or he'll become a free agent. Christian Dvorak is one that I brought up on Friday. BK, he played for Montreal last year. Middle six guy who just hasn't been able to stay healthy, but this year he was about a 35-point producer. And then the other one is Nick Bukestad. And that's a lower level guy that you just take a shot on for 1 year and see if he goes out there and performs.
And then Foxa, but that's a different
And then Foxa, and I think Fox is just a matter of which, by the way, JR put out there earlier today that they're still in conversation to try and get him signed. Those are it. I'm out on Mikael Granlund. I think I'm actually going to be upset if they sign Granlund.
Really?
He's not a centerman. He's a winger. And T-Bone brought up would
you rather have Nico Sturm or Mikael Granlund?
I'd rather have Nico Sturm.
Okay.
Cheaper, less years, and he plays the position that you need.
What if Granlund is 2 years?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't play the position.
If they trade Kyrou, is your thought on that change?
Are you getting a centerman in return for Kyrou?
Yes.
Then, yeah, my opinion changes on it because he's a winger. If I can get him as a winger, great. But as the team stands right now, I'm not going to go.
Evgeny Kuznetsov. You excited him now?
I would take more of a shot on Kuznetsov than Granlund.
You're crazy.
I am crazy,
I like
but
you, man, but
I just want a centerman. I don't want a guy that's not good defensively and basically was on a cup contending team and they said, you're not good enough to play center for us. I'm not going to pay $5+ million for that. So I'm going to be upset about that one. Pius Suter, I won't be upset about until I see what the sticker shock is. If you pay more than $5 million on him, I'm going to be upset because I just think that's way overpaying for a guy that doesn't match what you need. So I'm going to be going to the $5 movie bin at Walmart. I'm going to be looking at Cody Glass, Bukestad, Dvorak, somebody that just is a placeholder for this season, and then you can go about your business from there. Those are the 3 guys for me, in my opinion.
Yes,
I think those all make all the sense in the world.
I agree, but I want to throw Granlund in there. He would be on my list.
I would throw Granlund in as well.
So would Suter, to be fair, too.
The reason why I would throw Granlund into the mix is because I think it might be a 1-year placeholder, Alex, where this is not putting Booch at center. This is a guy that has had a history of being at least adequate at the position at the NHL level. You're not giving him this massive top 6 role. He's a third-line center, adds a little bit of offense to that line. And then whenever Dvorsky is ready, dude, get off the center position. And then you figure out what to do with some of these wingers at that point in time. Maybe you trade Granlund. Maybe you trade one of those other wingers that is available, and that allows you to have a surplus at that position now. So I wouldn't be opposed to signing Mikael Granlund tomorrow if that's the route that they decided to go. But beyond that, man, unless they trade Kyrou, I see no scenario where they sign a winger.
Yeah.
There's obviously no goaltenders that you need. I don't think they're going to sign a defenseman. So it really is, I think it's either Suter, I'll put Suter into this list, Granlund, or one of those legit, in a best case scenario, third line center, probably for most contenders, fourth line center.
And I don't believe they're going to have any signings to announce tomorrow, other than if they re-sign Foxa or re-sign another one of their RFA players, which there's not a lot of them. I think Alexandrov's one that is qualifying offer, and if he doesn't get it, it'll be a free agent. I think you're either going to see a trade tonight before midnight, or you're going to see probably some type of signing later this week / the following week. It's going to be somebody that is still out there that goes on a 1-year prove-it deal with the Blues rather than signs on day 1 of free agency.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up next, we'll start to preview the series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. We'll give you our final thoughts on Jordan Kyrou as we're now less than 12 hours away from his no-trade clause potentially kicking in. So we'll talk about that coming up on the other side as well. And we'll give you a shot to score 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler at Enterprise Center. That's all next in the Rewind here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In just a minute, we'll give you a chance to score 2 tickets to Adam Sandler on Friday, October 17th. That'll take place at the Enterprise Center. We'll have your opportunity all week long. Every show this week here on BK and Ferrario, we'll have a chance for you to score 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler at Enterprise Center. Alex, Cardinals back in action this evening. 5:40 first pitch, a little bit of an early start. It is our pleasure to see Eric Fetty on the mound once again for the St. Louis Cardinals. Always a joy to watch those. Andrew Heaney on the other side. He's having a okay season for the Pittsburgh Pirates, a mid-4s ERA, lefty. This is not a great matchup for the Cardinals with where their offense is at right now from the left side of things, but this should be the type of pitcher that you can take advantage of, certainly more so than Paul Skeens or Mitch Keller, who are scheduled to go the next couple of days. Pittsburgh is coming off of a really nice series win for them, a sweep over the...
They're labeled hard-hitting Pirates in one teaser for this game tonight.
Okay, that's...
They're the hard-hitting Pirates right now.
Okay, they're hitting .235 as a team with a .347 slugging percentage.
But they did well against the Mets, and now they got labeled a hard-hitting team, okay?
There you go. Your expectations going into this one, Alex?
They're low because of the struggles against the left-handed pitchers, but they should be higher because the last 2 games that Heaney has pitched, he's barely made it through 4 and has given up 7 runs each. I feel like if you come away from this game lacking offense once again, like he did in those 2 games against Boyd and Imanaga against the Cubs, it's going to be very obvious where their need is at, and it's a right-handed bat. But I hope that the Cardinals keep that confidence going high, regardless who they're going up against, and I'll say it's a 5-1 victory for the Cardinals.
I know they struggle against lefties right now. It's Andrew Heaney. Come on. I mentioned this in the office today. I don't remember if I said it on the show or not. The Cardinals, what's made them very good this year is when they go up against a team, and whatever their weakness is, they typically exploit it.
They're very good against bad teams. 27-15 this year against teams under 500.
And Heaney is not a great pitcher, so I expect the offense, even though they have their struggles against lefties, should still be able to get to him, right? Like, it's not Matthew Boyd, who's pitching like an all-star. It's not Shota Imanaga, who's a guy that would start in a playoff series. He's a guy that if you acquire him as just to cover innings to save your bacon in the second half of the season, they should be able to get to him, and they should take 2 or 3 in this Pittsburgh Pirates series.
They've won game 1 in each of their last 4 series. I think they're going to do the same tonight. I think they win it by a final score of 7-5. I think Fetty has some...
Rough night for the Cardinals.
And then we see what happens with the pitching the rest of the way. Skeens and Keller, not an easy task. Sounds like Keller, by the way, is somebody of serious interest for the Chicago Cubs. There's been some buzz on Keller potentially going there.
An in-division trade?
And interestingly, some buzz about potentially... God, what's his name there? Third baseman. Why am I blanking on him? Brian Hayes potentially
stinks.
Moving to the Cubs as well. And some Cubs fans were like, why would we want to downgrade at the position? So
we're good.
That's the proper response.
We'll see what ends up happening there. All right, Alex, on the other side of things, the Blues have tonight to decide what to do with Jordan Kyrou before his no-trade clause kicks in. Do you think they will trade him?
No, I don't. I think these rumors are out there because the Blues are trying to make a obvious upgrade to their roster, and nobody is going to be willing to bite on that. So I think Jordan Kyrou will have his no-trade clause kick in by tomorrow, and free agency will open with the Blues having Kyrou on his list, which, by the way, update on free agency, Puckpedia just tweeted that confirming that Glass will receive a qualifying offer and remain the property of the Devils.
I mean, one more center. Why not take him off of the market?
Just offer sheet him, am I right? Just offer sheet him.
Do you think that he will end up in St. Louis tomorrow? Do you think Jordan Kyrou will still be on the roster this time tomorrow?
I think he'll still be on the roster. I don't see where the upgrade's coming from for them to be trading Jordan Kyrou, so I say he's on the roster tomorrow.
I think he will be as well. I do not think they are going to make this trade. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. We have your chance right now to score 2 tickets to see Adam Sandler on Friday, October 17th. That'll take place at Enterprise Center. Just have the correct answer to the following question. Texter number 101. If you have the correct answer to this question and you are Texter 101, you're getting those tickets to see Adam Sandler. I mentioned earlier today, the Cardinals have the best record in Major League Baseball since this date. What is that date? Cardinals have the best record in Major League Baseball since this specific date. What is that date? Last year was Mother's Day. This year it is this date. What is that date? If you have the correct answer in texture number 101, you are going home with that pair of tickets to see Adam Sandler at Enterprise Center. Tomorrow we'll be broadcasting live out at Enterprise Center for development camp. We're expecting to be joined by a few different prospects throughout the next few days, hoping to get some updates on the Blues as they go through the first day of free agency as well. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next with a little bit of a surprise here on 101 ESPN.